Click, click. The steady tap of keys echoed through the empty office. Most of the lights were off. The few that still worked buzzed overhead, flickering just enough to throw shaky shadows across the walls. Takakakik. Footsteps. They sliced through the silence. Fast, uneven, too close. They came from behind me, heavy and frantic, darting left and right like something was pacing just outside my field of view. Hunting. Then, just as suddenly, they stopped. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Would you like to quit the game? Play button yes. No. I didn't hesitate. I hit yes and killed the game. Ugh. I sagged back in my chair, one hand pressing against my churning stomach. Too close. Again. I was used to this by now. Every time I pushed my horror limit, the nausea came creeping in. I wasn't good with horror. Never had been. Once I hit that threshold, it wasn't just fear anymore. It was this awful, dizzy urge to vomit. So, why was I playing horror games at 1 in the morning? Because I didn't have a choice. The industry was flooded. Too many developers, not enough work. If you wanted to stay employed, you specialized. Horror, gotcha, live service, something profitable. Nightmare Forge Studios made horror games, and I needed the job. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a small pill bottle. Menxalanis, take 2 pills twice a day, or, as directed by your healthcare provider, swallow whole with water, preferably with meals. Do not crush or chew. The words blurred halfway through. With a sigh, I popped 2 pills into my mouth and swallowed them dry, chasing the chalky taste with a mouthful of lukewarm water. Acha! A shiver ran through me. I grabbed my forearm, trying to steady the tremor. Those 2 pills cost more than I made in a week. They were part of my daily routine now, a lifeline for whatever was wrong with my brain. Several doctors, countless tests, and I still didn't have a real name for it. Just a vague line in a file. Progressive neurological condition. All I knew was that something inside my head was slowly breaking down. Without the pills, I wouldn't last long. I didn't want to die, but at this point, it felt like I was just buying time. I shook the thought away and glanced at my watch. 1:30 a.m. Everyone else had gone home hours ago. I was the idiot still here, combing through logs and reviews after the release of Gentle Whispers. The reviews were the real horror. Recent reviews, mostly negative, 27 reviews. This game sucks. Bought it for something fresh. Got cheap jump scares instead. Not scary at all. Refunded after an hour. Boring and tedious. Another failure from Nightmare Forge Studios. They've really fallen off. I scrolled, feeling the weight in my chest grow heavier line by line. That mostly negative tag was like a knife. Sales were sluggish, and the reviews weren't just bad. They were killing the game. This is bad. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. If this kept up, the studio was done. And when a studio dies, the programmers are the first to go. Nobody keeps back-end devs around out of charity. Finding a new job in this market? Yeah, that was a different kind of nightmare. I swallowed hard. No, don't spiral. Don't go there. The game was still new. Things could turn around. Maybe some big streamer would pick it up. Maybe we'd get a wave of positive reviews. I told myself that. Then I refreshed the page. Recent reviews, negative, 41 reviews. Well, shit. Every refresh made it worse. The negativity was snowballing, like the whole internet had decided to bury us alive. At some point, my brain just shut down. I stopped reading, closed the tab, and exhaled slowly. Flop. This game's a flop. The word hung in the air. I'm going to lose my job. I didn't need to be the writer or the director to know where this was heading. When a studio sinks, it drags everyone down with it. I hope the severance is decent, I muttered, rubbing my eyes. I could already picture tomorrow. The director's rage. The emergency meeting. The speeches about underperformance. Then, the dreaded line. We're letting you go. I slumped forward and covered my face with my hands. Bitterness twisted in my chest. Why did it always end up like this for me? Why did every choice feel like the wrong one? Ding! A sudden notification popped up in the corner of my screen. I flinched. You've got mail. Mail? This isn't even my personal PC. My first thought was spam. Or malware. Or some phishing scam. I moved the mouse to close it, but before I clicked, the screen flashed. Ding! Horror developer system. Would you like to activate? Play button yes. No. I frowned. What the hell? Was this some joke build? A prank from one of the designers? I was already pissed from the reviews, and now this? I reached for the mouse. Ding! The trial period will now begin. Wait, what? When did I press yes? I stared at the mouse. I clearly remembered not clicking. My finger hadn't even touched the button. The screen flashed again. We look forward to working with you, developer Seth Thorne. I froze. It knew my name. A cold shiver went down my spine. I grabbed the mouse again on instinct, then recoiled. It was freezing. Not room temperature cold. Not office AC too low cold. Dead cold. I stared at my hand, then at the monitor. None of this made sense. Ding! Are you ready? A smiley face popped up in the center of the screen. Slightly smiling face. Its eyes were round. Harmless. Friendly. I blinked. The smile twitched. Slowly, it began to stretch, pulling wider and wider, past what should have been possible. Twitch. The color drained from the emoji, the yellow warping into a deep, wet red. Twitch. Its eyes vanished, replaced by two crooked crosses. Twitch. A wave of dizziness slammed into me. My vision swam. My limbs turned heavy. Something cold brushed against my ear. I went rigid. It was right beside me. Every hair on my body stood on end as a voice whispered, far too close, warm breath ghosting over my skin. Good luck. Everything went black. Welcome, new developer. The moment I opened my eyes, a translucent window floated in front of me. Behind it, I was sitting in the middle of a massive opera-style theater. The lights were out. Heavy curtains hung over the stage. Rows of seats stretched into darkness. Balconies stacked one above another like empty jaws. Not a single person in sight. And me? I was drenched in sweat. Did I pass out on my desk? I pinched my cheek. Ow! Nope. That hurt. Before I could process anything, another window popped up. This is not an illusion or a dream. This is a real scenario from the horror developer system. My stomach dropped. You are the lucky developer chosen by the horror developer system. In short, we'll help you make great horror games. No, thanks. I'm good. Let me out. Whatever this was, I wanted nothing to do with it. My stomach was already starting to roll. I'm going to puke at this rate. Please don't worry. If you are unsatisfied with our service, you can always quit. We always strive to provide the best experience. Oh, perfect. Then let me quit now. For a second, the nausea eased. But only for a second. Before you decide, you'll be running a scenario. There was again the twisting, heavy feeling in my gut. But please don't worry. As a welcome gift, we'll provide you with a beginner starter pack. You will also receive exclusive information about the scenario. All of this is to help you become a better horror game developer. Poof! For objects materialized out of thin air and dropped into my hands. What the? I looked down. A white mask. A blank sheet of paper. A walkie-talkie. A pair of earplugs. Small windows appeared above each one. Blank mask. A simple mask to hide your identity. Many styles are available. Non-consumable. Mind printer. Draws whatever you are thinking. Uses left. 1. Earplugs. Blocks all music for 10 minutes. Uses left. 1. Walkie-talkie. Just a regular walkie-talkie. Non-consumable. 1 use. Earplugs, a mask, a magic sketch pad, and a toy radio. This was the starter pack? Was this some kind of joke? How was I supposed to use any of this? And just a regular walkie-talkie. Was the system mocking me? Click. I pressed the talk button. All I got was faint static. What garbage? My gaze drifted to the mask. Pure white. No features, just 2 empty eye holes. No markings. No designs. Nothing. Why would I need to hide my identity? Wait. A horrible thought hit me. Don't tell me. The things remember faces? Great. Now I really felt like throwing up. The scenario will begin shortly. Please get ready. I tried to stand up. My legs didn't move. My body wouldn't respond at all, as if the chair had swallowed me whole. This is bad. My stomach churned harder. I needed to get out of here. But, no. Calm down. Think. I played enough horror games to know the pattern. This was just another scenario, right? The system did say I could quit. I just had to survive until it ended. That was it. Clear the scenario, then quit. Hold on. I looked up at the floating notification. If If I fail the scenario, what happens? Do I just wake up back at my desk? If that was the case, then no. Silence swallowed the theater. Another message followed, this time in blood red. If you fail, you die. Every muscle in my body locked up. What kind of? The scenario is now starting. Operation Silent Requiem. Class. A self-conducting orchestra capable of producing beautiful yet haunting melodies. The orchestrator, obsessed with perfection, has never failed to captivate a single spectator. One must take care not to be too enchanted by the music or risk losing their sense of self entirely. A chill crawled up my spine. Scenario candidates will be joining shortly. Would you like to use any item? You have 10 seconds. Scenario candidates? My stomach clenched. Wait, there are other people in this too. No reply. Just the dead, heavy silence of the theater. Gritting my teeth, I looked down at the items in my hands. Instinct screamed at me to do something, anything. I grabbed the mask and lifted it toward my face. A new interface appeared. Mask design, play button gesture, clown, skull. Why are they all creepy? There were tons of designs, but they all had the same problem. Every single one looked like nightmare fuel. 5 seconds remaining. TCH. I scrolled faster. 2 seconds remaining. Screw it. Play button gesture. You have selected gesture. The mask will now morph. The mask shrank and fused to my face. I tried to rip it off, but the moment I raised my hands, strands of red fabric fell into view, each one tipped with a tiny bell. Jingle, jingle. Soft chiming filled the air. Then, boom, the theater lit up in an instant. Every seat that had been empty a heartbeat before was now occupied. Applause exploded around me. The sound crashed over me like a wave. My breath caught in my throat as I turned to the side. Cold nausea hit me full force. The person sitting beside me had no face, no eyes, no mouth, no nose, just smooth skin where their features should have been. Swoosh, swoosh. More figures appeared all over the theater, flickering into existence like broken frames in a glitchy video. Unlike the faceless audience, these newcomers had distinct faces. They were dressed in sleek black uniforms with golden insignias on their chests, an emblem that tugged at my memory. I've seen that symbol somewhere, but where? They filed into their seats. The way they moved, the glances they exchanged, it was all too natural. They knew each other. They were used to this. But when their eyes landed on me, everything stopped. For a heartbeat, every gaze locked onto the jester mask. On me, their expressions tightened. Confusion, wariness, annoyance, like I was a bug in their carefully scripted event. Then, almost in unison, they looked away and sat down properly. My hand curled into a fist. They definitely knew something I didn't. I opened my mouth to say something. Beep. A quiet crackle came from my hand. A husky voice spoke through the walkie-talkie. Captain, who the hell is that? I don't remember the last clearance squad mentioning a jester. I stared at the device. Should we remove the variable? What the hell did I get dragged into?
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
Ugh, I know. I'm looking at the report right now. There's no mention of a jester. A deep, female voice crackled from the walkie-talkie. Her words started a frenzy over the comms shortly after. Those incompetent fools. Don't tell me they missed something like this? Calm down. That might not be the case. The jester might be a variable. It's not uncommon for such things to happen. But quiet down. As the female voice echoed again, all noise ceased. The scenario is about to start. We will ignore the jester for now. However, why don't you keep an eye on it? We'll act accordingly. Understood. What was this conversation? Why did it sound like they were familiar with the scenario already? Who were they? Why were they here? And more importantly, why was I here? My mind raced with questions, but before I could process anything further, the atmosphere in the theater shifted. A sudden, overwhelming change. The applause died abruptly, and all noise ceased. As if in perfect sync, every head turned toward the center stage just as a change occurred. The walkie-talkie buzzed with another faint whisper. The scenario is starting. Get ready. Swoosh. Finally, the curtains drew open, revealing the stage. At the center stood a grand piano, its polished surface gleaming under the harsh spotlights. 12 empty chairs lined the stage, each positioned in neat rows to the right. The silence felt suffocating, unnatural, almost as if the very air was holding its breath. Creak! A sharp, jarring noise split the stillness as a figure emerged from behind the stage. Its movements were stiff, unnaturally so. A knot formed in my throat the instant it stepped into view. At the same time, the walkie-talkie vibrated again. It's coming, just like in the reports. Be careful. The figure was dressed in a formal black suit, the sharp edges of its bow tie barely visible beneath its thin, almost skeletal frame. It gripped a finely crafted violin, the strings tight and trembling under its hands. The figure's face, if you could call it that, was straight out of Nightmare. Desiccated skin clung to a skull-like structure, with thin, glistening needles stitching its mouth and hollow eye sockets shut. It moved toward one of the chairs and sat down, its hollow gaze fixed on us. Here comes the next one. Another figure followed, this one a woman in a long, flowing black dress. Her steps were stiff, yet carried a strange grace as she carried a cello, the polished wood gleaming under the spotlight. The bass. Each figure that followed had the same unsettling presence. Their movements were smooth, but there was something off about them, as if they were puppets controlled by some sort of string. The air grew heavier with each figure that took its seat. 12 chairs, 12 figures. The room became unnervingly still. And then the walkie-talkie buzzed once more. The orchestra has been filled. The temperature in the room dropped, and I shivered involuntarily. My hand clenched around the walkie-talkie, sweat beading on my forehead. Something else was coming. Something worse. I could feel it. Be's easy. Prepare yourselves. The conductor is about to arrive. Remember what the scouts have reported back. The moment the conductor arrives, the scenario really begins. I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. Just who were these people? How did they know so much about this scenario? And who were the scouts? Were they also people who received the strange system? If so, keep attention on the overture, the first symphony. It'll last approximately 10 minutes. In that time, your emotions may be swayed by the music. You must resist at all costs. Overtune? First symphony? Just what? It's starting. The conductor has arrived. Creak. The wood cracked once again, this time sharper than before. My heart pounded out of my chest. The conductor arrived, his figure even more grotesque than the others. Its body was twisted, its limbs unnaturally long, its skin stretched tight over jagged bones. Yet, despite its grotesque appearance, it moved with unsettling calm, as if it belonged here. It reached the podium at the front of the stage, pausing as if to survey the room. Then it turned its head, slowly, horribly. Despite the crude stitches sealing its eye sockets shut, it looked directly at us. I swallowed silently, my hands trembling. It looked at us in silence. It raised its hands. Then, wham! The music began. Everyone get ready. From this moment forward, the overtune is about to begin. You need to resist at all costs. The hurried yet alarmed voice of the woman echoed in the walkie-talkie once again as the faces of the group in front of me changed. Unable to understand what was happening, I prepared for the inevitable, biting my lips and covering my ears. But it was of no use. The music still reached my ears. It was a soft melody, one that tickled the ear gently and sounded like a gentle yet soft whisper. This isn't bad, I thought. In fact, it sounded good. The music was pleasant to the ear. The music, it was beautiful at first. A soft melody that whispered its way into my mind, gentle, almost seductively so. The violin's smooth notes blended perfectly with the deep resonance of the cello, each instrument complementing the other in perfect harmony. It was easy to get lost in the sound, to feel the weight of the world slip away as my muscles relaxed. my thoughts drifting into the melody. I nodded my head to the rhythm of the music. I felt myself forget about all the bad things. The stress faded, and so did my thoughts. Gradually, I sank to the tune. I started to immerse in it. It was all I thought. It was... My eyes snapped open, and I gripped my right hand. It was trembling, my fingers unsteady as they dug into my shirt. Sweat drenched my body, soaking through my clothes. My breathing became shallow, frantic. Oh God! I felt my stomach twist as I looked ahead. I glanced at the conductor, and in a way that made my blood run cold, its eyes turned to meet mine. Its lips began to curl, agonizingly slow, as the dark, raw stitches across its mouth pulled tighter, stretching the pale, decaying skin in a creepy smile. I suddenly forgot how to breathe. My stomach churned. Oh God! The music grew louder, more insistent. No, I have to stay focused. Stay awake. I tried. I really tried. Until, bang! A chilling scream pierced through the hall. There's too much into it. They might lose their mind, and... I looked in the direction of the wall, my stomach twisting as a result. I don't know who these people are, but considering how they're affected by the music and the information that I learned through the walkie-talkie, this isn't their first time experiencing something like this. They also seem to be aware of the fine details of this scenario. How did they know? Did they also receive the system? Or was there a different reason? My gaze eventually fell on the items that I had received. A walkie-talkie, a paper that can print my thoughts once, earplugs, and the mask that I'm wearing. Having worked in a lot of games before, there was one thing that I fundamentally understood as a game designer. No item was random or useless. Each item had a reason for its usage within the scenario, and seeing as to how I had used 3 items so far, the key was the paper in my hand, alongside the walkie-talkie. The walkie-talkie. A thought suddenly crossed my mind. If I can hear through it, then I most likely can also communicate with them. Does the scenario require their help? Or can I clear it without them? I silently swallowed while checking the time remaining. 08:41. My pulse pounded in my ears as I forced myself to remain calm. But could I really remain calm? Another scream shattered the tension. Though the music was gone, I still heard that, a high-pitched wail of pure, mindless agony. And then, the horror unfolded again. It was the same as the first death. Disfiguring themselves with their own nails, they started screaming at the top of their lungs. Bang! Then came the hollow, sickening crack as they slammed their heads into the walls. Once, twice, again, and again, each blow more brutal than the last. Bang! Bang! Blood splattered, seeping into the walls like ink on parchment. My stomach lurched. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to swallow the surge of nausea. No, matter what you do, resist. The voice from the walkie-talkie was strained, desperate. See, Captain, I can't hold on for much longer. The music, I can't drown it out. Resist. You must resist until the second symphony. Things will get better then. Will they? I scanned the faces of those around me. Pale, drenched in sweat, trembling. Taking into account the expressions of all those present, I doubted most of them would be able to make it to the second symphony. And even if they did, what if it got worse? But more important than that, I don't want to see any more blood. The sight was too eerie and chilling. Closing my eyes was tempting, but I knew better. I had to observe, had to find a way out. How annoying. Holding my tongue, I shifted my attention back towards the description of the scenario and read it once again. Self-conducting orchestra, renowned for his relentless pursuit of perfection. One must be careful not to become too entranced by the music, lest they lose their very sense of self. There was a way to clear this. I had all the tools in order to clear the scenario. All I needed to figure out now was the key to turning the situation around. 04:37. Time continued to slip. Only 4 minutes remained until the earplugs lost their effect. My mind raced. I had to think fast. Spurt. In the midst of my thoughts, something wet splattered against me. My muscles tensed, and I lost hold of my breath for a few seconds. It trickled down my mask as I held my tongue and forced my thoughts to stray away. Focus, focus. I once again read the scenario description. Self-conducting orchestra, renowned for his relentless pursuit of perfection. One must be careful not to become too entranced by the music, lest they lose their very sense of self. I needed some sort of clue. Something. Anything. 03:43s. Time ticked. It waited for no one, constantly draining, just like my mind, as the beat of my heart drummed loudly in my mind. Bah! Thump! Bah! Thump! Anxiety started to gnaw at me. The closer I was to running out of time, the more my anxiety grew. It started to eat my mind, chewing it slowly. Self-conducting orchestra, renowned for his relentless pursuit of perfect. My head snapped up. A thought slammed into me like a freight train. Eyes locked onto the conductor at the center of the stage. His hands moved in elegant sways, each flick of the conducting stick precise. Deliberate. Perfect. Wait, perfect. An idea formed, but it was an improbable one. Time ticked as I did so. 01:22s. My breathing turned shallow. I was slowly running out of time. There was only 1 minute left. That was how much time I had left before the earplugs stopped working, before the music would once again enter my ears. By then, it would be too late for me. No, perhaps it was already too late. No, no, I refused to let that happen. My lips soon parted open, and in the midst of the orchestra, my voice quietly whispered in the air. This fucking sucks. My voice was drowned out amidst the music and screams. And yet, as if capable of hearing my voice, the conductor's movements stiffened. It was brief, but it didn't escape my eyes. It worked. A glimmer of hope ignited within me then. That's when I opened my mouth again. I'm about to fall asleep. With my arms crossed, I pretended to close my eyes while my head drooped off. At the same time, I stealthily looked in the direction of the conductor. As expected, his movements stiffened again, but only for a brief moment. My heart sank. It's not enough. There was a reaction, but it was far from enough. 01:15s. Time was ticking. I was running dangerously close to it. Not enough. Not enough. Not enough. I desperately looked through the items provided to me before. So far, I only had 2 left with me. Having already used the mask and the earplugs, I realized the answer would be in the 2 items in my hand. But how? How could I make them work? My chest suddenly tensed as time continued to tick. I felt anxious, and my stomach rumbled. 0:59s. My hand shook as my eyes darted between the 2 items in my hands. And then, something suddenly struck me. I didn't hesitate to reach out for the walkie-talkie. Click. Gradually, my lips parted as I spoke. If you won't live, do as I say. Things weren't supposed to turn out like this, Clara muttered under her breath. Her gaze locked onto the conductor at the center of the stage. His baton sliced through the air in sharp, fluid arcs, guiding the melody with each one of his movements. Her grip on the walkie-talkie tightened. The earbuds in her ears dulled the sound, but couldn't silence the music. Somehow, someway, it found its way into her mind. Click. Resist. 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 Her mouth opened and closed on repeat, the same words tumbling out over and over. What once used to be something she said to remind her squad members was now something she said in order to keep her own sanity. She feared the music would consume her entirely if she stopped, even for a second. If she faltered for even a moment. Clara bit her lip. How did things turn out this way? The first sign that something had turned awry had been the jester. Its presence alone should have been a red flag. Anomalies like that didn't just appear. They were warnings, omens of something within the gate changing. But as the captain of a ranked squad, Clara thought she wouldn't struggle with a ranked anomalous-type gate. Even if anomalous-type gates tended to have the lowest survival rates, she shouldn't have struggled like this. She had made enough preparations to succeed, from noise-canceling devices to reduce the impact of the music to the numerous dampening devices that they had brought in advance. None of it worked. Ag! A scream, raw, wet, and broken, tore through the symphony. Bang! Clara flinched. And no, stop. This needs to stop. Her hands trembled as she forced herself to look ahead. The conductor's lips, grotesquely sewn shut with blackened wire, stretched into a sickening grin. He was enjoying this. And Clara, for the first time in her life, felt something deeper than fear. Helplessness. Her entire squad was made up of 10 elite members, all trained to deal with such situations. But this was different. Even as an anomalous-type gate, which was considered to have the lowest survival rate amongst all types of gates, things shouldn't have been this difficult. Something had gone wrong. Horribly so. This was no ranked gate. It was ranked or higher. The music pulsed through the air, every note forcing her mind to grow numb, slowly inching toward her mind, sucking her into this strange state that made her fingers twitch. Think, think, think. Clara's mind churned, all sorts of possibilities running through her mind. She still had time. She needed to think of a way to help herself, alongside the squad, out of this predicament. In spite of the music slowly draining away her mental capability, she was still able to remain rational enough to think. See, Captain, I can't resist much longer. See, Atane, should we just attack? We might not be able to defeat it, but at least it might be able to stop it. Defeat it? Clara raised her head and looked at the conductor. She hurriedly shook her head. That was impossible. She could feel it with every bone in her body. This was not a creature they could defeat. The only way to defeat him was through the rules. Help. I'm about to think. Overhearing her squad members' cries and pleas, Clara bit her lips. Her eyes darted all over the hall, trying to find a way to solve this predicament. And yet, regardless of how hard she tried, she couldn't find a way out. This situation, it's helpless. It was amidst her helplessness and despair that a certain voice whispered from the walkie-talkie. If you want to live, do as I say. What? It was a voice she couldn't recognize, and most importantly, it carried an extreme calmness that seemed unfitting for the situation. A chill ran down Clara's spine. Slowly, she turned. The jester, he too, was holding onto a walkie-talkie. Ow! With a shaking hand, she pressed the device to her lips. Who are you? Silence. Clara's breath hitched. Across the room, the jester's expression changed. His face tensed, his features twisting into an unpleased frown. Then he spoke again. That is irrelevant. You don't have much time. Clara bit her lips, every part of her telling her to ask questions such as, why are you here? Are you human? What is your purpose? And so on. But understanding her current predicament, she knew that she didn't have the luxury to waste time. And for that reason, she had no other choice but to bring the walkie-talkie to her lips again. What do you need us to do? Another pause. The jester's face twitched again, his cheeks bulging just faintly, as if suppressing something. Clara let out a nervous breath. Was her answer unsatisfactory? Was he going to leave? What? And then the reply came. Insult the conductor. What? But it wasn't the answer she expected. Insult the conductor? Clara's head flicked towards the conductor, and her expression wavered. What sort of joke was this? A trick? Was the jester toying with them before their inevitable deaths? See, Captain, I can't hold on much longer. Don't listen. It might be a trap. Her squad's strained voices wavered through the static. Some pleaded, others warned, but all of them waited for her. The jester's voice came again, sharper this time. Are you going to do it or not? Clara's fingers tightened around the walkie-talkie. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. The choice felt impossible, but in truth, there was no choice at all. Do it, Captain, do it. The words barely left her lips before she turned to the conductor and forced out the first thing that came to mind. This is boring. Even if this is a trap, what other choice do I have? Since we might all die, we may at least try this. Her words triggered a ripple. One by one, the squad followed suit, their voices shaky but growing in confidence. Insults, boos, mocking laughter. Some sounded hollow, others desperate. But they all spoke. I've heard better. Can we make this stop? How disgusting. I want to kill myself with how bad this crack. A crackling, sickening sound suddenly filled the hall. The conductor had stopped, and so did the music. He stood in silence. The faint, rough yet strained breath of all those present echoed across the entire theater. That was when it happened. Swoosh! The faceless audience turned in unison, blank eyes fixed on them. Clara's body went stiff, every muscle locking in place as a sickening, wet rip echoed through the theater. It came from a conductor. With a sharp, violent jerk of its head, the stitches sealing the conductor's mouth snapped. Its lips tore apart, the flesh splitting with a sickening rip. Jagged edges of shredded skin hung loosely as its mouth gaped open. Then a hoarse, crackling voice slithered from its throat, echoing through the theater. What did you say? Its gaze locked firmly towards the expressionless jester. 00 aughts. The time ended, and the earbuds stopped working. But no longer mattered. The music had stopped, replaced by an unsettling, suffocating silence. Ha! My chest trembled as I drew in a shaky breath. By now, my stomach had flipped, twisted, and contorted in every possible way. Yet, as I locked eyes with the conductor, an unbearable weight pressed against my gut, as if something inside me wanted to crawl out. Or repeat that. His voice was low, grave, like something clawing its way up from the depths of hell. I swallowed silently, trying to pull down the bile that had built up in my throat. Relax, remain calm. The situation was unfolding exactly as I wanted it to. I just needed to finish what I started. But what if it doesn't work? What if what I thought was the wrong answer? Could it really work? But, amidst all my unnecessary thoughts, my lips slowly parted. Your music! I paused, forcing down the lump in my throat. It's garbage. Rattle. The entire hall shuddered. Chairs scraped against the floor. Curtains swayed. The balconies trembled. Instruments clattered to the ground. The rattling continued, violent, deafening, until it suddenly stopped. Gee, garbage. The conductor's head tilted at an unnatural angle, the motion slow, deliberate. A sharp crack echoed through the silence. My music is garbage? Crack. This time, the sound was louder, sharper. The conductor's head twisted further, past 90 degrees, past 180, until it dangled upside down. Yes, I nodded, forcing composure, or at least trying to. Then, a cold hand gripped my shoulder. I kept my gaze locked forward, muscles tensed. But something pulled at me. A shadow stretched across my lap, and slowly, a faceless figure emerged beside me, its hollow gaze locked onto mine with unsettling intensity. I'm about to puke, but as if things weren't bad enough. CRA crack. The hollow face beside me tilted its head, mimicking the conductor with slow, unnatural movements. A sickening crack split the silence as its face twisted and shifted, skin stretching and tearing with a wet, grotesque sound. A mouth appeared, and a voice whispered next to my ear. Why? Why do you say this? I'm perfect. It was perfect. My hand trembled, my back soaking in cold sweat. That voice. It's the conductor's voice. The creature leaned in closer, its breath chilling my ear. Tell me, the tempo. I chewed on my tongue, trying my best to remain calm. The rhythm. Everything about it felt boring. Slowly, I turned my head to face the faceless figure directly. I knew I couldn't show any emotion. The creature, it fed itself through fear. Trash. Bang. The theater shook violently. The piano sheets scattered to the floor. Instruments crashed. My grip on the armrest tightened. Keep a grip of yourself. Keep a grip. And then, it all stopped. Silence. Suffocating to the point of being unable to breathe. Soon my ears tingled. The conductor's voice reached my ears again. You do it. Do it? I paused for a moment, processing the words. If you say my work is trash, you do it. I do it. I clamped a hand over my mouth, stifling an unexpected sound. Huh. A sound soon escaped my lips. What's wrong? Ha ha. That sound soon twisted into a laugh as I suddenly burst out laughing, my voice a little high as a result of all the pent-up stress releasing. For some reason, it sounded eerily much like that of Clown. Me do it? What sort of response was this? I wasn't the conductor. It wasn't my job to do their job. The response was so stupid that I found myself laughing unexpectedly. Around me, the expressions of the others shifted. The way they looked at me, it was almost the same as how they had looked at the conductor moments prior. Rattle. The hall quaked again. A chill crept up my spine. Cold, bony fingers wrapped around my neck. You laugh. The grip tightened. Air flooded my lungs. In that moment, I felt it. I was one snap away from death. How dare you? The grip intensified. It was strong, and my vision started to blur. I'm going to die. I felt it with every bone in my body. And yet, I wasn't panicked. I could still do it. Reaching out for the mind printer in my hand, the image of a sheet of music appeared in my mind. It was a classic piece I had seen in the past. Making a few adjustments to it, I pressed onto the paper. Work, this has to work. The paper trembled in my grasp. Notes appeared, one by one, like ink seeping from the void. Faster, faster, faster. If you can't show me, then why are you here? The conductor's voice coiled around my ear, tickling it and sending shivers down my entire body. I didn't bother. I continued to stare at the paper in my hand. Halfway done. Why? If so, then maybe you should die. I could hardly feel my surroundings. My mind was a hazy mess, and the world around me started to spin. My heart pounded loudly in my head. Time was ticking. Almost. I hope that next. Here. I forced the word out, shoving the sheet up. All noise ceased then, and the grip over my neck loosened. What is this? I didn't reply and looked at the figure next to me. As if understanding, it loosened its grip further, and I opened my mouth. Play this. It's a famous composition. Silence. All I felt was the chilling gaze of the conductor as it eyed the paper in my hand. I continued. Maybe the piece was boring. You say you're perfect. Show me. Play this piece. It's my favorite. Is this a challenge? Yes. Once again, the hall fell into a state of silence. The silence stretched endlessly, each second dragging on in agonizing suspense. In that moment, every bead of sweat on my forehead became painfully noticeable. And just when I couldn't resist for any longer, okay, the hand pulled away, allowing me to fully breathe again. Before I knew it, the conductor held the sheet of paper in their hand, placing it directly on the podium. At the same time, the other members of the orchestra picked up their instruments. Their coordination was astounding, and in matters of seconds, everything was back in place. All heads similarly turned to face the front once again. Tapping its baton on the podium, the conductor raised its hand and, wham! The music started. The theater came alive, and a nice melody filled the surroundings once again. And just like before, I felt my mind slowly get pulled into the music, my thoughts squirming and my body twitching. I could see the faces of the other people change, too, realizing that something was wrong. What's wrong? Why did nothing change? I can feel the music messing with my head again. Don't tell me this was all a trap. The female voice echoed from the walkie-talkie, rushed. I chose to ignore her. But soon the others followed. I knew it. This was a trap. Captain, what do we do? They were panicking. It made sense, because to them, nothing had changed. But I knew better. I watched the conductor closely. It lifted its baton for the next part when it stopped. The music halted. The hall fell silent. The conductor scratched its face, staring at the sheet in confusion. It tried again, lowering the baton, then paused. It hesitated, and that's when I smiled, because there was no way it could play a tampered piece. I did it. Wham! The orchestra came to life. Music surged from every instrument, cascading through the theater in flawless harmony. The rhythm, the melody, perfection. And yet, with a single motion of the conductor's hand, it stopped. Silence. Why? The conductor's skeletal fingers clutched the music sheet, flipping through it with jerky, unnatural movements. Its head twisted, angling at odd degrees, as if trying to decipher something incomprehensible. It should be like this. Another flick of its hand. Wham! The music started again. The same tune, same rhythm, same everything. And as a result, stop. Once more, silence strangled the air. Why? The conductor grabbed the music sheet. The conductor's grip tightened around the sheet, fingers twitching as its sewn eyes traced each note. It knew something was wrong. I could see it, but its obsession, its need for perfection, kept it shackled, stubbornly refusing to let go of the flaw. It needed to make it perfect. It's time to end this. I reached for the walkie-talkie, but just as my fingers brushed the button, pain. Shit. Why now of all times? A sharp, Piercing pain stabbed through my skull. My fingers trembled violently, my body spasming as if my own nerves had turned against me. I could hardly get any air out as I struggled to keep myself seated. I was having an episode. At the worst times, KH. A subtle groan escaped my lips as I tried to hold it in together, my chest trembling and my legs pulsing. I just took the medications too, but I knew this was probably a result of all the stress that I had just experienced. My condition, it was relapsing, but at the worst possible time, just when everything was about to be over. No, I clenched my teeth and brought the communication next to my mouth. Wham! In the background, the music continued. I pressed the button. Click. Insulted again. Let it tell how easy this music was. I didn't get an immediate response back. Instead, I saw them all looking at me, watching, waiting, doubting. I swallowed back the pain and pressed the button again. What are you waiting for? And then it started. What is this crap? It's even worse than before. Isn't this quite a famous work? Why can't he play it? I'm disappointed. Is there a way to get a refund? The insults poured in, each one more venomous than the last. The conductor flinched. Its movement stiffened, but it refused to stop. Just stop. Let us out. It waved its hand. The orchestra played. The same result. Stop, just stop. Kill me already. It kept trying, again and again, trapped by its own delusion of perfection, bound to an imperfect peace. As the conductor stopped once again, the insults rained down again. It was now on the breaking point, its entire body trembling. My entire body tensed at the sight. Even though my mind wasn't as sharp as before, and I was still suffering from the after effects of my condition, I could tell that something was about to happen. I gripped the armrest of the chair. What's it going to do? I nervously licked my lips, waiting for the conductor to do something. Let us. Bang. A sickening crash echoed as the conductor seized a cello and smashed it against the floor. Splinters flew. The remains of the instrument lay twitching at its feet. Pin-drop silence filled the theater as all eyes fell on the conductor. Slowly, its head turned toward us. Black, hollow pits where its eyes should be, its stitches torn apart. A suffocating pressure crushed against my chest. You want to leave? Its voice cracked and split, dragging through the air like nails on bone. The temperature plummeted. My breath curled in front of me, the frost creeping over my skin. My nerves tensed, and my breathing started growing heavier. Fine. Bang, bang, bang. Thunderous cracks reverberated through the walls as the massive theater doors burst open at the far end, revealing the exit. The entire room trembled, chairs rattling, chandeliers swaying. The audience, those cursed, hollow-eyed figures, turned in unison, their empty gazes drilling into us. Get out! The conductor's scream tore through the room, almost shattering my eardrums. Feeling my head twitch, I pressed down against the armrest and forced myself up. I can stand. This was different than before. I didn't let my delight show and turn my back on the conductor. A chill ran down my back the moment I turned my back, feeling the cold and malicious gaze of the conductor. It's almost over. It's almost over. I felt all eyes on me, and, swallowing slightly, I moved towards the exit. 1 step, 2, 3. Each step felt loud, drumming into my mind as I drew closer and closer to the exit. I felt the center of everyone's attention. And in the next moment, I reached the exit. Congratulations, you have cleared the scenario. A system notification flickered in my vision. The moment I stepped through, the world plunged into darkness. The suffocating tension unraveled all at once, and my knees nearly buckled. H.A. Huh. I bent forward, hands on my knees, sweat dripping down my face. I survived. Some way. Somehow. I survived. You were able to exploit the conductor's weakness to perfection in order to clear the scenario. You have passed with flying colors. Rewards are waiting for you. I'll stop. I waved my hand, trying to dismiss the notification in front of me. I don't want to hear it. You told me that this was a trial, right? I passed it, so let me go. A new notification flashed, but it was just blank. In its own way, it felt eerie. Are you sure? A new one appeared shortly after. Are you sure you want to quit? Yes, I'm sure. Why would I want to subject myself to this torture again? Just let me go back to my old, mundane life. What if there were a way to solve your disease? Would you continue? It was my turn to be silent. What did you just say? You can cure your disease. I held my breath. It can cure my disease? The one that no doctor was able to find a cure for, and the one that they claimed would take my life in a couple of years? I licked my lips. They were strangely dry. Do you want to cure your disease? The system is capable of doing so. If not, you can always quit. Your memory of everything will be wiped out, and you will live your life like before. But do you want to live your life like before? I didn't. Death was scary. So was the pain. But at the same time, I hated to think about the scenarios I'd have to go through if I chose to accept. I either reject the offer and die painfully, or accept it and live in fear, but longer. What a hard fucking choice. What do you wish to choose? I already had an answer in my mind, if I had to be honest. Both options sucked, but I chose the option that sucked the least. Just treat it like a game. A deadly game. Okay. You wish to accept the system? Yes. Ding. A chime rang in the air. Congratulations on accepting the horror developer system. To a future of awesome game creations. The world you know will now change. Wait, what? Loading. Wait. Loading complete. With the flash of another notification, the dark world around me faded, and I found myself back in my office space. I'm back. I looked around me. Everything was as it was before I left it. For a moment, I almost thought that everything had been a dream, that what I had experienced was merely a hallucination that stemmed from my exhaustion. But that thought quickly faded with the flash of the screen before me. The changes have been made. You will now be given your rewards for completing the mission. Poof! An item appeared in my lap. This is... I looked at the item, shocked to see it was the mask from before. Wait, is this the reward? How? My words were cut short by another notification. Reward 1, blank mask. Type /item. A simple mask used to hide your identity. There are many different styles you can try. Non-consumable. Reward 2, spectral glasses. Type /item. A pair of glasses that will allow the wearer to see through things others can't see. Non-consumable. Reward 3, containment vessel. Type /basic node. Upon activating the node, the user gains the ability to contain anomalous creatures and objects. Warning: if the anomaly's strength exceeds the node's capacity, containment will fail. This may result in severe backlash. Non-consumable. Another item appeared. A pair of black-framed glasses. This is... I turned my attention to the second reward. Spectral glasses? Allows wearer to see through things others can't see. I stared at the glasses for a few seconds before shifting my attention to the next reward. In particular, my attention fell on the description. Basic node. What in the world was that? The third reward was different from the first two. It wasn't an item like the others. I had no idea what it was or how to use it. This is so confusing. I scratched the side of my head, eyeing the mask and glasses in my hand. After a moment's hesitation, I put the glasses on. My heart raced as I settled them on my face. I felt an unsettling dread rise from within me. I'm not going to be seeing ghosts, right? The moment I placed the glasses on my face, my vision turned blue. Cold. The temperature plummeted in an instant. I could see my breath hanging in the air, curling in the dim light of my monitor. My fingers trembled as I stood, my body instinctively tensing. I stood and glanced around. The office was empty. Rows of identical cubicles stretched out in silence, their partitions blending into the dimly lit space. The soft gray carpet cushioned my steps as I made my way toward the bathroom. I stopped at the sink, gripping the cold porcelain. I looked up at my reflection. Although the glasses masked the dark circles under my eyes, they couldn't completely hide them. I ran a hand through my hair, pushing it back. Even with my vision tinted blue, my hair remained jet black, and my eyes, normally brown, held a faint tinge of gray. I stared at my reflection a moment longer before pulling the glasses off. I looked better without them. They made me look a little too nerdy. Thankfully, all they did was make the world blue. I hadn't seen anything unsettling. Yet, I I breathed out again, relieved to see no more mist escaping my lips. With that, I splashed cold water on my face, then turned and made my way back to my desk. I had just arrived at my monitor when I stopped. I stopped short, my eyes locking on an unexpected pop-up on my screen. A sense of déjà vu hit me. Not again. Hesitant, I still reached for the mouse and clicked on the tab. Suddenly, the pop-up vanished, and an application began downloading onto my monitor. Within seconds, it settled onto my home screen, an icon of a Game Boy with an emoji in the center, its eyes replaced by 2 bold X's. Before I could react, the app opened automatically. Game developer, Seth Thorne. Status, first order. Black small square, basic node, containment vessel. Items, black small square blank mask. Black small square spectral glasses. Shop locked. Quests, unlocked, available, 1. Black small square develop a game with a 1-star rating. Reward, unlocks the shop. Develop games. Gentle whispers, rating, 0.5. I stared at the screen for a moment before swallowing hard. My attention immediately went to the quest section. Reward, shop unlock. For a reward, it didn't seem like much, but taking into consideration that my current goal was to find a way to heal my condition, I understood that the key to finding the cure was probably within the shop. In that case, my first goal was clear. I need to develop a 1-star game. I paused and groaned. I might be fucked. It had taken an entire team and a large budget to create Gentle Whispers, and it still only got a 0.5-star rating. That was a game with a decently sized budget and production. Creating a 1-star game was going to be a serious challenge. Besides that, my focus soon fell towards the status section. First order, basic node. There were quite a few terminologies that I was quite confused by. I knew that the basic node was the thing that I had unlocked through the rewards, but even now, I didn't know how to use it. Should I just ask the strange system? Would it even answer? It had been eerily quiet for the past several minutes. Before I could say anything, I heard a gentle clicking sound behind me. Click. Startled, I turned to see a disheveled figure stumble in. His white shirt was untucked, and his tie hung loosely around his neck. His brown hair was a mess, a clear sign of sleepless nights, and the heavy scent of alcohol clung to him. Ah, Seth. It was Elbert, one of my colleagues on the project. Good morning. I checked the time, surprised to see it was almost 6 a.m. How did time fly by so quickly? I glanced down at my messy clothes. There was no way I could face the section chief looking like this. Without thinking, I made a beeline for the bathroom. If I had even the smallest chance of not getting fired, I had to look at least somewhat presentable. Otherwise, the odds of me developing a 1-star game were basically non-existent. How could I create a game by myself? Yes, I just need to show that I'm still committed to the team. Where are you going? But just as I started moving, Albert's voice stopped me. Pausing, I looked at him. I'm going to get changed. I've been staying up all night, and my clothes are quite messy. I should get changed before the section chief comes. I started to head for the bathroom, but Albert gave me a strange look. You didn't get the message? Message? My heart sank when I saw his expression. Please don't tell me. We've been laid off. Albert pulled out his phone, flipping it around to show the most recent message on the screen. All of us. Tuesday morning. I stood in front of my cubicle, a box resting on my table, all my possessions packed inside. Just like that, I was fired. No call. No face-to-face meeting. Through text. No, not even through text. I got told by my drunk colleague. The general vibe around the office was gloomy. I wasn't the only one packing up my stuff, with several other colleagues doing the same. Their heads hung low. Even though I had expected it from the beginning, the reality of actually being laid off only hit me now. And it sucked. It sucked a lot more than I previously expected. This was especially so when taking into account that I had only been given a 2-month severance pay. In that time, I needed to find a way to develop a 1-star horror game. Otherwise, I massaged my face and stared at the monitor in front of me. It's a good thing that the strange app can be deleted. The computer belonged to the company, so I couldn't bring it with me. Thankfully, I managed to transfer everything to my laptop and wipe the rest from the system, making sure nothing was left behind. As the final files completed their transfer, I closed the laptop with a resigned sigh and placed it in the box. Shortly after that, I turned around and left. Ding! The elevator chime rang, and I stepped inside, pressing the G button. I waited as the doors began to close. Just then, a soft, harmonious tune filled the air. Hearing the sound of it, a small smirk played on my lips. Isn't this the same song I gave to that strange conductor? But unlike the one I had given to the conductor, this one was complete. It was soft and soothing to the ears, making me involuntarily close my eyes. Was it exhaustion? Or was it the weight of everything that had just happened? I felt my mind begin to sink. The darkness embraced me, and I sank deeper and deeper into the darkness. It felt cold, and yet at the same time welcoming. How nice! Ding! My eyes snapped open the moment the elevator chime rang again. Oh crap! I was about to fall asleep. I really was overworked after all. I moved out of the elevator. Anyways, what should I do now? The first thought that crossed my mind was finding another job. My current priority was finding a way to develop a game that would meet the quest's satisfaction. There were many different studios that could provide me with the necessary tools to develop such a game, but my expression grew grim when I thought about them hiring me, let alone the fact that I was one of the people who had worked to create that disaster class. How long would it take for them to hire me? I don't have much time. I had no savings, and the severance pay only covered 2 months' worth of income. That would hardly be enough to last me several weeks if I took into account the cost of my medicine. This is bad. I ruffled my hair as I made my way out of the lobby. Just as I found the exit in the distance, I felt a small vibration from my pocket. I picked up my phone to see a familiar name. Hello, Seth? A hesitant voice came through the phone. I heard about your recent game. Are you? Ah, so you've heard. I felt bitter. It hadn't even been a day, and the news had already spread. Yes, I got fired. I didn't lie and went straight to the point. Kyle, in some way, could be considered my brother. The two of us grew up in the same orphanage. Given my condition, it wasn't strange that my parents had abandoned me. But even though my condition wasn't as severe when I was young, it still put a heavy burden on the orphanage. The moment I came of age, it directly kicked me out. Nonetheless, the ties I had made within the orphanage were deep ones. Ah, how are you holding up? I'm fine, I guess. No, I felt like shit. But it's not like I can do anything about it. The game sucked, so I can only try to make a new one. You're still going to develop games? Yes. I had no other choice. The quest made it so that I had to develop them. Then, Kyle paused as if chewing over his words. I took that time to make my way out of the lobby and reached for the door that led to the exit. Pushing it open, a wave of fresh air washed over my face as I squinted my eyes, catching a glimpse of the grim, gray sky above. Then what? I brushed my hair away. The wind was quite strong. Then what do you think about my previous offer? You made an offer? I couldn't recall. Kyle had tried to help me in the past, more times than I could count. He was the reason I could afford my medication, despite my insufficient salary. If it's about giving me more money, then... I stopped mid-sentence, my eyes falling on the sight before me. As if stripped of all air, my mouth opened and closed, but no word came out. At the same time, Kyle's voice echoed through the phone. No, I'm not talking about lending you more money. I know that you won't take it. I'm just, considering how your work is related to horror, why don't you come over to my guild to see how things work there? Kyle paused, his pitch growing higher. Of course, you won't have to do anything. Just observe and stuff. I've recently gotten promoted, and I think I have enough leeway to get you to come as an observer. He was speaking a lot. It was unfortunate that his words went from one ear to the other. With my eyes fixed ahead, I struggled to focus on what he was saying, my mind blanking out at the sight that greeted me. What in the world? Massive high-rise buildings had replaced the park that once stood here. Giant LED billboards adorned their tops, displaying people clad in black uniforms. At the bottom of the screen, a scrolling text read, Guild Severed Stars managed to clear their first-ranked anomalous type gate. Only 5 members survived, but they... Turning to the next billboard, an image of several people leaving a strange portal, their armors bruised and battered as they waved their hands, the flashes of the cameras raining down on them. The bitter taste of the coffee lingered at the tip of my tongue as I sat at a nearby cafe and stared at my laptop. Anomalous entities, guilds, monsters, gates. The more I scrolled through the internet, the more nauseated I felt. Everything, and I meant everything, had changed. Whether it was the geography, history, or politics of the world, everything had changed, except for the people in several places. I should take some time at home. Hold on. That was when something suddenly hit me. I hastily grabbed my phone and inputted a street name and number. Please, 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 peel. Nothing. The results gave me nothing. In other words, the apartment that I used to live in was gone. Just like that. I didn't know whether to be happy or sad. On one hand, I was happy considering that I had rent due, but on the other hand, I no longer had a place to stay. But there was even more troubling news. My stuff. It's gone. I didn't have anything of particular importance in my apartment. But what about my clothes? What the hell was I going to wear over the next few days? I swiped the page away and looked through my contacts. Kyle. After a little bit of thought, I pressed on his name. The line was silent. So I licked my lips, trying to find the right words to say. Then, about that offer you mentioned. Does it come with a place to stay? Kyle's guild was called Severed Stars, apparently a well-regarded one. I didn't delve too deeply into researching them, as I spent the latter half of the day using my severance pay to buy new clothes and essentials. By the time I was done, it was late into the night. Holding onto a couple of bags, I waited on the pedestrian road. There was dead silence around me, with barely a soul in sight. The street lamps above flickered weakly, casting long, unsteady shadows as I stood alone in the middle of the road. It's kind of chilly. With the seasons changing, winter was starting to come. I checked my watch. It should be coming soon. I hop on. A sudden burst of light seared my eyes as bright flashers lit up the street, followed by the rumble of an engine. A yellow cab emerged from the distance, cutting through the darkness around me. The window rolled down. Are you Seth? Hello. I tossed my bags into the trunk and slid into the back seat. Coming back from work? Yeah, just finished. Late shift, huh? Must be exhausting. Yes, pretty tiring. I smiled faintly at the cab driver before pretending to put my earbuds in. I didn't actually have any earbuds. I just wasn't the type to enjoy casual conversations. It tended to make me feel uncomfortable. As if getting the message, the driver turned his attention back to the front and the car sped off into the distance. I leaned back on the seat and whipped out my phone. First thing I checked, my bank account. Balance, $7,350. At least that hadn't changed. Currency was still in dollars. Of course, there was a bigger reason for that. There's only one country in the world, or more like, one supercontinent made up of a mix of all countries. From what I had gathered in my research, the world was now governed by the Vesperine Union, a bureaucratic superstate formed from all previously existing nations. Its operations were delegated through the Bureau of Unusual Affairs, BUA, the organization responsible for managing global affairs. But that wasn't the craziest part of it all. Far from it. I pinched the screen and zoomed out on a particular image, revealing a massive floating landmass suspended in the sky. At its center stood a sprawling city, its bright lights shimmering through the gray mist that clung to its edges like a veil. Not only has the world changed, but there are strange floating islands too. Spanning enough space to house an entire city, it was considerably large. Do you mind if I put some music on? Lifting my head, I turned my attention towards the cab driver and pretended to remove my earbud. Yes. Music? Do you mind? Oh, yeah, sure. Perfect. A slow, harmonious tune filled the air. Gentle, soothing. I put my earbud in and continued on with my research. The history of this world is complicated. There are mentions of natural disasters, but also rumors that the Bureau is hiding something. I merely scrolled through such information. Whatever. I'll just ask Kyle later. He's in a guild, so he should know quite a bit. My main focus right now was finding a way to develop a one-star game. Everything else was secondary. I put my phone to sleep and shifted my attention towards the nearby window. The world outside was dark, with just faint lights flickering. To find affordable clothes, I had to venture farther from the heart of the city. As a result, the towering skyscrapers gave way to low-rise buildings and quieter streets. Sitting in the car, the world seemed somewhat detached. The music played softly in the background. My eyelids grew heavy. I hadn't slept the night before, and exhaustion finally caught up to me. The tune drifted through the air, gentle, lulling. My eyelids closed. Darkness embraced me, and in that fading moment, a strange thought crossed my mind. Why does the tune feel so familiar? It almost sounds like, wham! My eyelids sprang to life as I jumped up and shifted my attention towards the driver. Shit! The driver's head was tilted, his eyes unfocused as the car slowly started to veer away from the main road. My heart shot into my throat as I hurriedly reached out for the wheel and steered the car back in place. But, screech! The tires skidded as the car swerved left, then right. I lost my balance, my shoulder slamming into the window. Okay, hey! I shouted for the driver, but as if in a trance, his eyelids remained closed. Shit, what do I do? I frantically scanned the dashboard. Think. Then, my eyes landed on the radio. The song. The tune was still playing. A sickening realization crept up my spine. I didn't hesitate. I reached for the dial. And the exact moment I did. Why? The driver snapped out of it, his hands jolting for the wheel. Screech. The car twisted and turned again, but after several seconds, he managed to take control of it as he quickly pressed on the brakes. The vehicle screeched to a stop. For a long second, nothing but heavy, ragged breathing filled the space. The driver turned to me, eyes wide, face pale. I'm. Keep driving. But, keep driving. Just keep the music turned off. My voice was steady, but my fingers clenched against my lap, cold sweat trickling down my spine. Sinking deep into the back seat, I swallowed quietly. I just sat there in complete silence, until I felt a small vibration coming from the laptop in my bag. Reaching out for it, I opened the lid and stared at the message that appeared. It was just one message, but it was enough to make every hair on my body stand on end. You're being haunted. We're here. The cab pulled up to a sleek, polished building with a spotless exterior. Large windows adorned its facade, offering a glimpse into its dimly lit interior. I got out of the car and retrieved my items from the trunk before taking out my wallet. The driver stopped me. About that. Considering what had happened before, it's on me. No. I took out a $20 bill and handed it to him. No, Nancy, wait, hey. I tossed the money inside and left. I was practically the one responsible for the incident. Putting my wallet away, I pulled out my phone and messaged Kyle. My fingers kept slipping as I typed, causing me to misspell several words. Where are you? I couldn't be bothered to correct the mistakes, so I just sent the message as it was. I was currently in no state to care. It's still trembling. Ever since I received the message on my laptop, my hand hadn't stopped trembling for a second. I constantly found myself checking my surroundings as I tried to stay away from anything that could produce any music. But it was hard. Despite it being late into the night, there were quite a lot of people around the area. The surroundings were brightly lit, with people passing by every second. Under normal circumstances, I would have felt safe, but now, it only amplified my sense of unease. Especially since I had no idea how it managed to find me, despite supposedly belonging to the initial scenario. Seth. Just then, a familiar voice entered my ears. Turning my head, I was greeted by a figure about my height, around 180 centimeters, waving at me. His disheveled, dirtish brown hair swayed with his movements, and as his sharp green eyes locked onto me, he moved closer before stopping. His brow rose in surprise as he looked at me. Wow, you look like a mess. You think. Not only did I get fired, but a strange system suddenly manifested before me, throwing me into a scenario where a single wrong move could have killed me, gaslighting me into accepting it by preying on my weaknesses, changing the entire world, and then later discovering that the strange monster in the weird scenario was now haunting me. The fact that I had yet to have a mental breakdown was a miracle in itself. No, but seriously, how am I still sane? Well, you'll get through it, Seth. I think this might be a good change for you. Oh, really? If not for the fact that I knew he was referring to something else, I would have already thrown hands. Wait, can I even do that now? He did say he now works for a guild. Yes, of course. Now that you're no longer a slave to that company, You can finally take some time to work on your own game. You're quite talented, so I'm sure you can figure something else out. And if you can't, Kyle paused, shifting his attention towards the guild office behind. Well, you can always get some sort of inspiration or real-life experience to further improve your game. Oh right. As if recalling something, Kyle massaged the back of his head and put on an embarrassed expression. I forgot that you hate horror. Right. There was that too, but mainly because, whether I liked it or not, I was going to get my fair share of experience. If we were strictly talking about experience, I was going to be getting plenty. Just the thought made me groan. Well, let's go now. I'll bring you to your room. Kyle turned around and led me toward the building near the main guild. It wasn't as tall or eye-catching as the main guild, but it didn't need to be. He guided me in. This is the residence building. Normally, an observer wouldn't be able to stay here, but I've been doing quite well for myself recently. Kyle puffed up his chest with pride. Of course, this building is primarily reserved for guild employees rather than guild members. In a way, you could say you're lucky. I'm lucky? Oh yeah. Kyle walked up to the reception, grabbed a key from the wooden cabinet key holder, and headed straight for the nearest elevator. Those guys at the guild, they're lunatics. For your own sake, I'd recommend you just stick with the regular employees. The reason you're lucky is because you don't get to see them. I see. For Kyle to be so wary of them, just how bad were they? We're here. We stopped before a small wooden door with the numbers 501 imprinted on the front. Kyle handed me the keys. This here is your apartment. It's nothing big, but you can stay here for as long as I'm here. If anybody asks who you are, just tell them you're with me. With you? I took the keys and raised my brow at Kyle as he grinned. Like I said, I'm doing quite well for myself. He slapped me on the back, then brushed his messy hair back as he turned around and raised his hand to wave. Enough said, it's quite late. I'll leave you to it for now. Good thing you made up your mind today. Tomorrow is the new recruits' orientation day. Even though you're not a recruit, you'll still learn a thing or two if you loiter around. I'll see you there. And like that, he left. I could only quietly stare at his departing back before shaking my head. Orientation day? I guess that might not be too bad. The next day eventually came, but it felt like forever had passed by the time it arrived. I didn't sleep a single wink. I tossed and turned all night, trying to sleep, but every little noise rattled me awake, forcing me to stay awake all night. I feel like shit. You look like shit. Even Kyle thought so as he greeted me at the entrance of the guild. He wore a black coat that reached down to his knees, partially concealing a white shirt underneath. He was dressed differently than I expected. On the other hand, I glanced at the nearest window and caught my reflection. Just a plain shirt, long brown pants, and black shoes. I looked rather bland. Creepy if one took into account the glaring dark circles beneath my eyes. I didn't get much sleep. You were that excited? Yes, think of it that way. It was easier to explain things this way. The two of us eventually made it into the guild, with Kyle exchanging a few brief pleasantries along the way. As we walked through the large lobby, I noticed a wide variety of people. Some were clad in armor and armed with cold weapons, while others were dressed formally, and a few casually, as they moved in all sorts of directions. The lobby was large, with the white marble floor reflecting the lights from above. I was also confused the first time I came here. As if reading my thoughts, Kyle smiled while stopping by the elevators. You probably know, but there are all different types of gates. Some gates require heavy armor, while others, well, they don't need them as much. We both entered the elevator, and Kyle scanned his card. We're part of the containment group, meaning that we don't need to wear any fancy and eye-catching armor. Oh, and we're also going down, not up. I glanced at the bottom he pressed, and my eyes shot up. 5th floor? What the hell? We have no choice. Kyle shrugged as he saw my reaction. The lower floors are the only place where we have enough space to contain all of the anomalous entities we gather from gates and the real world. Oh, huh, what did he just say? What? Why are you looking at me like that? No, I mean, you just. Real world. Oh, you're talking about that. Kyle pressed his hand over my shoulder. Relax. It's normal for anomalous entities to escape from undiscovered gates. They're usually a lot weaker than when inside the gates, so dealing with them isn't a problem. Well. Eyeing me, Kyle laughed. You'd probably die if you got targeted by one. No, never mind. You will die. But don't worry, it's not like that'll actually happen. You'd be dead before you even realized it. Haha. Well, unless they're toying with you. Then it'd be a different story. If. Stop. I cut Kyle, biting my fist. Just stop talking. I needed some time to think about what to write in my will. Ding. The elevator doors finally opened, revealing a spacious room adorned with a gray carpet that stretched across the entire floor. Several white chairs were neatly arranged in rows, all facing a large projector screen. The place was already fairly packed, with several people chatting and exchanging pleasantries. But not all were like that. There were quite a few that had tense expressions on their faces. Oh, look who's here. A man, tall and sharply dressed in a gray suit and black tie, made his way toward us. His gaze was fixed on Kyle. Of all people, I didn't expect one of our star prospects to come to some rookie orientation day. One of our star prospects? I glanced at Kyle, who laughed nervously, clearly embarrassed. Come on, you're exaggerating. Him? Exaggerating? The man dismissively waved his hand. Come on, you and I both know you're one of the hottest prospects in the guild right now. The number of inquiries I've been getting about you from other guilds? It's been a headache. The more I listened to the conversation, the more peculiar my expression became. So not only the world changed, but Kyle has now become some sort of highly sought-after prospect. Anyways, the man turned his attention to me, tilting his head as if he'd just noticed me. Who might this be? Seems like a fresh face. Is he one of the new recruits? No, he's with me, Section Chief. Ah, the Section Chief paused, as if he'd just had a sudden thought, and slapped his fist into his open palm. Could he be that observer you were talking about? Yes. I see. The Section Chief shot me one more curious glance before turning back to the end of the room. He waved his hand at someone across the room. Come here. There's someone I'd like to introduce you to. Soon, a young man with short, bowl-cut black hair and brown eyes appeared. Section Chief. His face was slim, and dimples appeared on the sides of his cheeks as he walked over. My initial impression was favorable. He seemed like a nice guy. Here, Kyle, the Section Chief said, patting the boy on the shoulder. This is Miles. He's got potential. When you have time, try to help him out. He'll be useful for us down the road. Miles? I cocked my head slightly while looking at the young man, who went on to greet Kyle politely. As I looked at him, I couldn't help but squint. Something about him felt vaguely familiar. I couldn't quite explain it, but the more I stared at Miles, the more I felt a strange sense of déjà vu, and it started to unsettle me. I just couldn't quite put my finger on what made him feel so familiar. Hello. I blinked, snapping out of my thoughts. Before I knew it, he had come to greet me. He had a polite smile on his face as he extended his hand towards me. Nice to meet you. Oh, hello. I greeted him back, shaking his hand. I wasn't great at conversation, and the moment after I let go of his hand felt strangely awkward, but Miles didn't seem bothered. He simply smiled again. I heard that you're here as an observer. Are you looking to enter the guild? Me? I quickly shook my head. No, far from it. I'm just a game developer. I'm here to gain some experience so I can create a better game. You're a game developer? He looked intrigued as he asked. Yes. Not a great one, but one. What type of genre? Horror. Yeah. I couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed admitting it. Miles' expression shifted slightly, almost awkward. He seemed to want to say something, but at the same time hold back. It made me grow curious. What's wrong? No, it's... He pursed his lips. I don't know, I just feel like horror games are not it. He shook his head and sighed. You know, while not many people work in guilds, with most sticking to relatively normal jobs, there are plenty who've witnessed some pretty horrific things, many on a daily basis. I just don't think horror is a great genre overall. If you want to create a horror game, you need to make one that truly stands out. I stood in silence, unable to utter a single word back. Why didn't I think about this before? Indeed, this world wasn't the same as my old world. With guilds, gates, and all that nonsense around, people's tolerance to horror was much higher than back when the world was normal. In short, horror games sucked in this world. I wanted to groan out loud, throwing whatever curse I could think of in the air. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse. At this rate, I really was going to die in just a few months. Everyone, please gather around. The section chief's voice boomed throughout the room as he gathered the attention of all those present. Please take a seat. The orientation will start shortly. I scanned the room for Kyle. I eventually spotted him near the projector, speaking with someone wearing a black hoodie and hat. Their head was lowered, obscuring their face, but the way Kyle looked so stiff, so respectful, told me they were someone important. You want to sit with me? Miles asked all of a sudden, snapping me out of my thoughts. Sure, I replied, relieved to have a familiar face beside me. We made our way to an empty seat. So far, my impression of him has been great. He felt quite down to earth. As the noise quieted down, all eyes turned toward the section chief and the person in the hoodie and hat, now sitting behind him with one leg crossed over the other, hands buried deep in their pockets. Kyle sat next to them, his back straight. It's nice to see so many talented people present. The section chief smiled, his expression satisfied. I won't make your orientation boring. There are a few things I want to cover first, but before we get into that, let me introduce you all to two of our star rookies. Kyle stood up, drawing immediate applause as everyone seemed to recognize him. The attention was intense, and I noticed a few envious glances aimed at him. He merely waved his hand before going back to his seat. Then, the section chief pointed to the person in the hoodie. I'm sure you all will like the next person up. With a playful smile, the section chief nudged the person in the hoodie. They soon stood up with a resigned sigh, slowly removing their hat to reveal a long cascade of blonde hair that fell down their back. Unzipping her hoodie, she revealed an olive-green military jacket that seemed to match the color of her eyes, layered over a black crop top that showcased her toned midriff. Her cargo pants, equipped with utility pouches, completed the look. The moment she stood, the room fell into complete silence. Some clearly stunned by their appearance, while others stunned by her fame. I wasn't sure, nor did I have time to be sure, because I was also stunned. But it wasn't for the same reason as everyone. Looks like quite a few of you recognize her. The section chief introduced her. This right here is the second rising star of our department, Zoe Turlin. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask her or Kyle. They'll be around today to help with orientation. Yo, Zoe spoke, waving casually as she rubbed the back of her neck. She looked somewhat tired. The surroundings remained silent after her greeting. I just stared, frozen. My mind was blank and my thoughts empty. I didn't know how to react at all after seeing her. After all, I knew her. Of course, I knew her. How could I not? She was one of the characters of one of the games I had previously created. Zoe Turlin. She was a named character that appeared in Forest Nights, a game I helped design by my previous company, Nightmare Forge Studios. The story's premise centered around Zoe and her rich family setting off for a fun trip to a remote island. But disaster struck when their helicopter crashed en route. Stranded on an unfamiliar island filled with terrifying monsters, Zoe was left alone, her parents missing, forcing her to confront the island's horrors in a desperate bid to find and rescue them. In the end, the game ends on a happy note with her managing to rescue them. There was no bad ending to the game, and that was what probably caused it not to do so well. This must be some sort of joke, right? A shitty coincidence. Most of you probably know her story. After accidentally crash landing on Centriest Island and single-handedly taking down multiple Titans before making it out alive, she's gone on to clear several ranked gates since then. What can I say? She's a star. Yes, so it wasn't a coincidence. It really was her. The fact that they even mentioned the Titans, monsters specifically designed to exist only within the island, only confirmed it further. So, not only has the world changed, but have the characters of games I had previously worked in appeared in this world as well. I paused for a moment and thought about all the previous games I had worked on. There were quite a few, a total of 31 to be precise, from low-end graphics to high-end graphics. So, you're telling me there's a chance a character from each game could be in this world? Motherfuck. Now that I've introduced our two superstars, I'll get straight to the main topic. The section chief pressed a small remote in his hand, and the projector came to life. A blank presentation slide appeared with just 4 words. Containment Sector Orientation Day. It looked kind of plain. I know what you're thinking. It looks boring, plain. At least you know. But it's not about how pretty it looks. It's about how clearly it presents the information. There's no point spending hours making it look nice when you're only going to see it for 10 minutes. In other words, you were too lazy to do it properly. The slide changed. What do we do? Wow, he really went hard with the presentation. As the name of our sector implies, we're responsible for containing and studying anomalous entities and items. But where do these entities and items come from? The slide changed again, now displaying a black vortex hovering in the air. That's right, Gates. Bang, bang. Two loud bangs echoed in the air, startling me and the few others next to me as colorful confetti fell down from above. By the time I processed what had just happened, I noticed Kyle and Zoe standing behind the section chief, their faces flushed red and heads lowered, clearly trying to hide their embarrassment as they held on to two confetti poppers. Oh God, what sort of place was this? The gates are each categorized into different types, and we at the containment sector handle anomalous type gates. Now, what are anomalous type gates? The slide changed. Anomalous gates. Anomalous type gates are gates that go beyond the simple clearing gates. Instead, they involve puzzles and strange challenges, like mind-bending problems and changing rules. They aren't gates one can just brute force their way into clearing. If it were that simple, we wouldn't have the highest cum. He was about to say the highest mortality rate, wasn't he? It's kind of dry in here, isn't it? No, it wasn't. I felt lucky knowing that I was merely here as an observer. Just the thought of working here made me want to puke. At the same time, I made sure to memorize all the information given in the presentation. It was, as Kyle said, this was important information I couldn't afford to miss. If an anomalous type gate isn't cleared or found in time, there's a high chance that the anomalous entity residing within the gate slips into the real world. And that's when it becomes a real problem. My ears perked up then. I suddenly recalled the conductor from the scenario I had previously experienced and felt this next piece of information was closely related to me. If an anomalous entity ever manages to enter our world, we'll have a short window to find and contain it. At first, it'll be weak, but as time passes and it gets used to our world, it will grow stronger. They will get stronger? My heart squeezed, and I felt my muscles tense. Does that mean that the conductor will become stronger? I felt my breath leave my body. That's why we need to stay on high alert at all times. If you notice anything unusual, don't hesitate to report it, even if it seems insignificant. That insignificant detail might be the one thing that saves your life and many others. I pressed my lips together and looked at Kyle. Should I come clean to him? The thought had crossed my mind yesterday when I met him, but I wasn't yet sure of his position within the guild or their stance on such matters. I didn't want to drag him into something so dangerous. I also couldn't shake the worry of them wanting to dissect me, or something equally unsettling. But listening to them now and seeing how much Kyle had understated his position, then perhaps. And last but not least, the slide changed again, and the expressions of several people changed. Don't be a pussy. Yes, it's as you've read. The section chief tapped onto the projector screen. Don't be a pussy when handling anomalous entities. Even if they are scary, you mustn't be a pussy. It's okay to be scared and brave, but it's not okay to be scared and a pussy. Why did it feel like I was being targeted? Of course, rationality is key. But if you're being chased by something like the ghost of a little boy, chances are it can't really hurt you. The more fear you show, the stronger some entities can get. In situations like that, just kick the little ghost boy. The section chief did a kicking motion. It's satisfying, trust me. What sort of? I turned my attention towards Kyle, who turned his head away in shame. Oh well, it looks like the 10 minutes are almost up. Checking his watch, the section chief pressed the remote. And, for a finishing statement, I'll say this. There are many different ranks for anomalous gates. I can understand that some are scary, and that the survival rate isn't quite high for people in our industry. But our job is crucial for maintaining order and peace in the world. He looked serious as he spoke. It's okay to be scared. It's a natural part of being human. Fear is something we all feel when faced with the unknown. Putting the remote in his pocket, he eyed all the recruits present in the room. What's important is that you don't stay passive. You need to actively engage in solving situations and handling cases. If you're passive in this industry, the only thing you'll get is a gruesome death. The projector turned off, and silence filled the surroundings. Then, just as everyone was busy processing his last words, he clapped his hands. All right, enough with the presentation. Now that we've covered the basics, let's move on with the practical stuff. He turned his back on us and walked past Kyle and Zoe. Shall we get to work and see how good you all are? Don't be passive. The further we walked from the conference hall, trailing the section chief to the -4th floor, the deeper his words sank into my thoughts. He does have a point. Dragging things further will only make the situation more troublesome for me. I should tell Kyle about my current situation. This is so that I can handle it before it gets too strong. I tried to move a little faster and get to Kyle, but right as I did, a voice stopped me. Hey! I turned my head and saw Miles, his dimples deepening with his smile. Oh, hey. He looked towards the section chief ahead of us. So, what did you think about that? About the presentation or the section chief? Both. I paused, and so did he. Then, we both burst out into a quiet laugh, as if understanding exactly what we were thinking. I wouldn't say he's the type of person I'd imagine to run a place like this. Tell me about it. Miles covered his mouth and looked around. This place looks a lot plainer than I thought. Oh yeah. I looked around me. We were currently walking along a long white corridor with white lights flashing above. People in white suits walked past us, not sparing us a glance as they held on to notepads and scribbled some stuff. For what I've heard, the 4th floor down is designed to hold the gates? Not quite. Miles shook his head. The 4th floor is the containment section. It is where most of the anomalous objects and entities are stored. Oh, that made some sense. It could also explain why there were so many people in white clothes. They were probably researchers. That also made me think. In that case, you won't be entering a gate. No, we're not ready for that. We're still new recruits. Oh, I see. That also made sense. Chances are we'll be tested with one of the contained objects or thrown into some kind of simulation without any information. I don't think it'll be anything dangerous, considering that it's our first day. I thought for a moment before looking at the distant section chief. I wasn't so sure about that. We're here. The section chief came to a stop in front of a large metallic door. He scanned his ID badge, and with a soft hiss, the door slid open, revealing a small white room filled with various devices and a large monitor wired into the wall. At the far end stood another metallic door, identical to the first. Everyone, get yourself ready. We'll be starting shortly. Take a piss. Take a shit. Preparing your kicking motions. I don't care. Just get ready. With a yawn, he slumped over the chair by the monitors, sliding a few meters before hooking his heels on the ground and forcing his way back. Staring at him, I felt a small pat on the shoulder. It was Miles. I guess. I'll get ready. His smile seemed forced as he held onto his own ID badge. By the way, about you, being here to observe. Does that mean you're not going to participate in the test? No. Oh. His smile grew even more forced. Good on you, he said. Looking at him, he felt a little pitiful. I could only give him a half-hearted good luck before finding a corner and sliding down on ground. I took the chance to retrieve my laptop from my bag. As the app started to load, a shadow cast over me. Are you going to sit here and observe everyone take the test? I looked up to see Kyle staring at me from above, his ID badge dangling over his neck and bouncing off my forehead. Seriously? Sorry. He pulled his ID back and looked behind. The section chief said you can take the test if you're up for it. It's a relatively easy one. You won't die, but I can't promise it'll be painless. You need to work on your pitch better. Can't promise it'll be painless? I'm even less interested in doing it now. I said it because I knew you wouldn't take it. Good that you know. I looked down at my laptop, eyes fixed on the app that was nearly done loading. As I watched the progress bar creep forward, my earlier thoughts came rushing back to me. Oh, right. There's something I need to tell you. I called out to him, my expression turning serious. Noticing the shift in my expression, Kyle tilted his head curiously. What is it? It's ding. Halfway through my words, my laptop vibrated and I froze. My heart gripped as I slowly lower my head to stare at the screen. What? Kyle frowned upon seeing my reaction, but I ignored him and stared at the message plastered on the screen in front of me. It was just one message, but it was enough to make my heart sink. You mustn't reveal anything related to or involving the system, directly or indirectly. You're acting weird. Why aren't you answering me? I yet again ignored him and typed a message on the application. What happens if I do? As I pressed send, my heart clenched even tighter, and a message soon appeared on the screen. You will die. I inhaled a cold breath as I slowly raised my head to look at Kyle. You okay? He had a worried look on his face as he looked at me. He seemed almost concerned, and as I looked at him, my head slowly turned towards the group of new hires, waiting for their trial. Without fully understanding why, my lips parted, and I mumbled, "The trial? Can I take part two?" Kyle froze for a brief moment before his eyes widened. Wait, seriously? You? I thought you were scared of scary stuff. Why are you suddenly? Don't be passive. I mumbled the chief's words back to Kyle as I placed my laptop in the bag and stood up. Following that brief interaction with the system, something became extremely clear to me. I can't be passive. To be passive meant to be unprepared. It became very clear to me that whatever this system was, it wasn't my friend. I couldn't just wait and let it dictate my actions. I had to take initiative and figure out how to handle situations, even when they were thrown at me out of nowhere by the system. The only one I could rely on was myself. The system made this clear to me just now. Wait, what? Kyle blinked his eyes at me, his mouth opening and closing as he struggled to formulate any words. I didn't mind it and just walked past him, heading toward the group in the distance as they slowly walked up to the door and entered. Wait, Kyle called out to me, but I ignored him. The section chief glanced at me as I lined up behind them, but didn't give it much thought. He didn't even give us any instructions, telling us to solve the situation on our own, and that in case we wanted to quit, we could just say the words, "I quit," and we'd automatically be teleported out. I could only silently close my eyes and wait for my turn. It soon came, and the world turned dark the moment I stepped in. When I regained my vision, I staggered back, hitting the wall behind me. I looked up to see the lights flickering above me. Flick, dark, flick, light. Each flick lasted for a total duration of 5 seconds. I held my breath and looked around. I found myself in a long, narrow corridor. The walls were plain white, and the corners loomed ahead, casting shadows that seemed to stretch unnaturally long. The silence was suffocating. All right, you can do it. This should be a very low-level situation. It shouldn't be too scary. This is the perfect chance to learn. Step. My step echoed loudly as I moved forward. The corridor seemed endless, each step of mine beating loudly in my mind, mimicking the sound of my own beating heart. Step. I continued forward, each step heavier than the last, my senses heightened by the eerie silence. The air felt colder here, and as I let out a breath, I saw a gentle mist flow out of my mouth. My steps never faltered. Eventually, I reached the corner and turned. But another identical corridor met my gaze. I paused, glancing back. Nothing. No sounds. No movement. Flick. The lights flickered again, and the surroundings turned dark. My ears perked up, and the silence around me amplified. I kept walking. Each step echoed louder, the sound stretching in the dark. Step. Step. I paused for a moment. Something didn't feel quite right, and that's when I heard it. Step. The sound of a step. One that didn't belong to me. Step. The footsteps crept closer. Every hair on my body stood on end as I jerked my head back, only to be met with darkness. Step. Step. They were getting closer. Too close for my own comfort. My heart pounded like it was trying to escape my chest, each beat louder than the last, drowning out everything else. As my breathing grew louder, it happened. Flick. The lights turned on again. A long corridor stretched before me, with nothing in sight. Just the silent hum of the lights above. I swallowed my saliva. There's no one. Regardless of where I looked, I saw no one in sight. The steps were also gone. Was I just imagining things? I thought for a moment before shaking my head. There was no way this was the case. This was certainly part of the scenario. In fact, just because I couldn't see them didn't mean that they weren't present. They could very well be still heading my way. The moment the thought crossed my mind, I immediately hurried my steps, moving forward. The goal of the scenario was simple. Find the exit. That was all the section chief said before letting us in. Find the exit. I looked around. The corridor stretched on, just like before, a long white hallway with 2 corners at each end. Nothing had changed, and somehow, that made it feel even more wrong. Rushing my pace, I reached the end of the corridor, and yet, the same long hallway greeted my sight. No, wait. I looked up and suddenly saw a black object hanging above the ceiling, staring directly at me. A camera? Before I could fully process the situation, the lights above flicked. Flick! The darkness took over once more. My hearing heightened, and my breathing grew more labored. It's just a straight line. I need to step. The step returned, this time closer than before. My entire body turned rigid as my stomach churned. I didn't think twice. Fucking. I moved once again, my pace picking up as I tried not to run too fast, afraid of hitting the turn in the distance. Step, step. Moving forward, I could tell that the distance between me and the steps was increasing. I was slowly starting to get away from it. This is crazy. Was this the level of something that was supposed to be manageable? I clenched my teeth and increased my pace further. The steps behind him were starting to lag more and more. And then, flick! The lights returned, and everything turned quiet. Ah! Looking back, my steps stopped as I realized there was nothing behind me. What? I could have sworn that. I took a deep breath and quickly pieced all the information together in my mind. 10-second intervals. The lights switch on and off. Every time the light switches off, the steps return. When the light turns off, they disappear. As I started to sort through the information I had, I moved forward, slowly inching towards the corner before me. I was just a few steps away. If I'm right, this is a cycle. Every time the lights go out, the footsteps return, and each time, they get faster. My stomach flipped at the thought. I wasn't very fit to begin with. I was already a little tired from just walking faster. If the steps grew faster every 10 seconds, then I need to quickly find the exit before it's too late. But how? How exactly was I going to do that? Eventually, I reached the corner and I turned. It was just as I turned that my steps froze. As I stared down the long corridor, my eyes quickly landed on a door tucked into the right wall. When did that? At the same moment, I caught sight of a camera mounted farther down, its lens pointed directly toward me. I felt watched under the eye of the camera as the lights above me flicked. Flick! Yet again, it turned dark. Step, step, step. My entire body tensed. The steps, they were faster again. Before I knew it, they were almost upon me. Every hair on my body rose. Shit! I didn't hesitate to pick up my pace, my heart beating out of my chest as my stomach clamped up and I felt all build up in my throat. Ah, fuck, I'm about to puke. I was now almost jogging, speed walking to some extent as I moved my hand in front of me, just in case I crashed into the distant wall. Step, step. The air felt colder, and the sound seemed to amplify in my mind. I moved and moved and moved. How much longer? The 10 seconds seemed to stretch endlessly as anxiety started to build up from within me. I could feel the stamina slowly start to drain from me. It wasn't anything bad just yet. However, I knew I didn't have much time left. I needed to persist. Persist until the lights turned back on. And then, flick, they did. I let out a sharp breath, swallowing my saliva as I looked around me. The same corridor. Yes, no, it wasn't the same. I fixed my attention on the door that stood in the middle of the corridor. Without thinking twice, I moved towards it and reached for the metal doorknob. Click, click. But the moment I turned the knob, it refused to open. It doesn't work. I tried a few more times before giving up. The door was locked. I covered my mouth before looking towards the nearby corner. I didn't know how much time was left, but after a brief thought, I rushed forward. I just need to confirm something. As I reached the corner and turned, my eyes landed on the corridor ahead and widened instantly. As I thought, the same hall, the same camera lens, and the same door, or more precisely, the same 2 doors. Indeed, right on the opposite end of the first door, there was now another door. As expected, changes don't just occur when it turns dark. Each time the light turns on and I turn a corner, a new change occurs in the corridor. New things get added. My heart sped up then. I felt like I was starting to slowly understand the rules of the scenario. Soon enough, I could think of a way to find the exit. I just needed to flick, taka-kaka. The steps were no longer steps. They were sharper and faster than before. My heart almost leaped out of my chest as I immediately rushed forward. I could feel my breathing growing faster as I ran, but I didn't pay any attention to it. 1, 2, 3. I just slowly counted the time in my head. 10. Flick. The lights returned, and I held onto my chest. I didn't waste a second and moved forward towards the next corner and turned it. And as expected, another change. Waiting for me at the corner were 3 doors. But there was only one problem. Click, click, click. They were all locked. I pursed my lips and swallowed quietly. If I just resist a little longer, the locks of some of the doors will unlock. At least after I reach a certain number of cycles. I just need to hold on for a little longer. All I needed to do was hold on. But there was only one problem with that. Clutching my shirt, I tried to collect my breath. HAA. I didn't think I'd be able to hold on for much longer. I was running out of stamina. Flick. Darkness. Flick. Light pierced my eyes. HAA. Holding onto my chest, I bent over and supported myself with my knees. I could hardly focus. My lungs seared with every breath, and my legs trembled beneath me. Sweat dripped freely from my chin. Shit. I might. Puke. I slapped a hand over my mouth as my stomach churned violently and the built-up ball almost left my body. Barely holding it back, I lifted my head. 6 doors. 3 on each side. Each one was locked. I scanned my surroundings before forcing myself forward again. As I moved, my legs threatened to buckle from exhaustion, and each breath burned like fire in my lungs. Should I just quit? I couldn't last much longer. In fact, I was already on the verge of collapse. If I pushed myself further, the steps would reach me, either this cycle or the next. If that happened, then, a cold shudder ran through me. I should just quit. I've already found all that I needed to find. The main goal was for me to experience how a low-rank scenario worked. I had achieved my goal. In that sense, I could now quit and go back to making the game. As my lips parted open and the words "I quit" were about to slip my mouth, I paused. Staring ahead, I licked my lips. Might as well, right? I wanted to see what changes would occur once I turned the corner. Though the distance was short, it still took me a lot of effort. And when I did, my eyes fell on the corridor ahead. The same white walls, the same distant camera, the same 6 doors. Everything about what was ahead was the same. Everything. Wait. I blinked my eyes and looked around me. 6 doors? My eyes widened at the realization. But before I could fully process the situation, the lights above me flickered. Flick! Yet again, I was plunged into darkness. The moment that happened, my entire body tensed and my heart clenched tightly. Without wasting a single second, I bolted forward. The rushed sound of steps thundered loudly from behind me. Taka-kaka-kaka-kaka. I threw all thoughts out the window. 1. My lungs spewed fire, my legs trembling as I sped as fast as I could. I could hardly breathe, each gulp feeling like the last as the air around me seemed to turn colder and colder. The steps behind me drew nearer by the second. 3. They were catching up fast. I was too tired. I could hardly maintain my speed, slowing down each second. Taka-kaka-kaka-kaka. 5. My body was falling apart. My throat burned. The sound, those steps, grew louder. They filled everything. 7. I couldn't keep up any longer. I was on the verge of falling. Looking ahead, the only thing I saw was an endless darkness. I knew I was close to one of the corners. 9. I could feel its breath on my neck, tingling the back of my neck as I almost froze on the spot, my heart leaping out as I opened my mouth. It was behind me, about to touch me. No, flick. Light. I collapsed in front of a white wall. HAA. Heavily gulping for air, my head spun, and I could hardly focus. However, slowly turning my head, I saw it. The same 6 doors. I groaned, feeling my entire body almost crumble. 3. I helped myself towards the nearest door. Click. It was locked. 5. The next door. Click. It was also locked. 6. Click. Locked. 7. Click. Locked. Arriving by the 5th door, I felt my anxiety shot up, slowly taking over my mind. Time was ticking away, and the doors were all still locked. My hand trembled as I reached for the 5th door. Please, please. I touched the handle. 8. Click. A familiar clicking sound echoed, but before my heart could sink, I saw the door slowly open. My eyes widened. It worked, but just as I managed to open the door, the lights behind me flicked. Flick. Darkness. I didn't think twice. The moment the darkness arrived, I quickly plunged myself into the room and smashed the door behind me, locking it directly. Bang! H.A. Slumping down on the ground, I felt my knees give up on me as I gulped for air once more, my hand touching the ground as my head started to spin. I was done. I could hardly lift a finger. This was where my stamina ended. I didn't know how long had passed since entering the room, but the moment I recovered my breath and was able to lift my head, I looked at my surroundings. What the? It was then that I noticed it. I was inside a small, windowless room. A single wooden table sat in the center, accompanied by a plain chair and an old computer. The screen was already on, casting a pale, flickering glow that barely lit the surrounding space. That faint light was the only thing keeping the darkness at bay. There was nothing else. No decorations, no sound, just that eerie silence and the dull hum of the machine. The air felt heavier, stale, like someone had just exhaled into the space seconds ago. I slowly pushed myself up and sat down on the chair before looking towards the computer. The cameras. The screen displayed a corridor. That corridor. All 6 doors in view. It's the same corridor I was in before. I can even see all 6 doors. Just as I was in the middle of observing the video, the screen suddenly turned black, and I flinched. However, I soon calmed down when I saw a green text beneath. Do you wish to turn on night vision mode? There's that feature. I reached for the mouse pad and was just about to confirm when I realized something. There's a timestamp at the bottom, and it's stretching for the same amount of time that I've been here. More or less a couple of minutes. A thought occurred to me, and I reached for the stamp and moved the time back. The video started to change, and my eyes widened shortly after as I saw my figure appear on the screen, catching my breath as I desperately reached for the doors. The corridor was still well lit. I looked like a total mess. From my hair to my clothes. Everything was a mess. The sight woke me up completely as the computer screen turned black shortly after. Ah, this must be the part where the lights turn off. I was just about to skip the part when I saw the same text from before. Do you wish to turn on night vision mode? Wait, this can work with recordings too. I held my breath before clicking yes. Immediately, the recording turned green, and the moment it did, my breath almost left my body as I saw a figure standing behind me in the recording, their slim black hands reaching out for me as I frantically ran forward. Judging from the pace and how frantically I'm running, it looks to be this round. I held onto my chin while staring at the figure. It was also right as the 10 seconds were up that I noticed a sudden peculiarity. Rather than just disappearing, before the timer completely reset, the shadow moved towards one of the doors and entered. The lights turned on shortly after that. I appeared shortly after, turning the corner as the camera displayed me moving from one end of the corridor to another. That's really trippy to see. Did it work the same when the doors weren't present in the first few cycles? Nonetheless, the video had finally caught up to my last moments in the corridors. It was right at the moment I was about to enter this room. First, second, third, fourth. I watched as the me in the recording tried to enter each room. Fifth. Wait. My thoughts paused as I saw myself reach for the 5th door. A dreaded realization hit me shortly after as the door opened and I entered. That's the same door the shadow entered. A breath. Warm. Damp. It tickled the back of my neck as my entire body turned cold. Realization hit me quickly. I wasn't alone in the room. Shit. I jumped up from the seat the moment I felt the hot breath from behind me and reached for the chair, throwing it directly at the shadow behind me. Bang! A loud crashing sound reverberated throughout as I looked behind me. There! This time I saw it. The instant I turned around, the air turned frigid. A towering shadow, vaguely human but warped, loomed before me. Its form writhed like smoke given shape. Black, sinewy arms slithered toward me, fingers stretching rapidly toward my neck, grasping it. I didn't even have the time to react before it grabbed me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. All I felt was dread as my right hand reached towards the hands on my neck, trying to peel them away. However, regardless of how much I tried, its grip was too strong. My strength was slipping away, drained by the previous exhaustion. Each second felt heavier than the last, and soon, the fight in me began to fade. My limbs sagged, and the darkness crept closer, waiting to swallow me whole. Yuck! Desperation kicked in. I fumbled behind me, hand brushing against something hard. Computer? My fingers wrapped around it. I lifted it, ready to smash it against the shadow, until a memory flashed. The corridor. The light. An idea struck. No time to think. With the last of my strength, I flipped the computer in front of me, screen aimed at the creature. An immediate reaction. The moment the screen of the computer moved before the shadow, it vanished from sight, the grip on my neck vanishing as well. Thump! I collapsed, gasping, dragging myself backward with the laptop clutched in front of me. Only when my back hit the corner did my breathing begin to stabilize. Huh! Every part of my body screamed as I struggled to maintain the clarity of my vision. My chest rose and fell in rapid motions, like the pistons of a car in motion. I could hardly think properly as my lungs burned in pain. I was on the verge of passing out, but I knew that I couldn't. I still can't pass out. I took another deep breath and tried to manage my mind. It was difficult, but soon I was able to think properly again. It was then that I finally assessed my situation and looked around me. It was dark, with the faint light of the computer casting a dim light over the surroundings, the shadows around me, sending chills down every part of my body as every little motion left me unsettled. The monster, or whatever that thing is, it can't come alive as long as there's light. The prior events proved this to me. That meant that as long as I held onto the laptop, I was safe. But was I really? I glanced down at the screen. 13% battery. I licked my lips, swallowing nervously. The battery was a lot less than I had anticipated. I pressed the battery tab and looked at the time it had left. 15 minutes of battery life left. 15. I looked at the laptop and almost cursed. What sort of shitty battery was this? Usually, they'd be able to last at least an hour. I guess this is part of the setting. I stopped questioning the battery and started to think of a way to get out of the situation. Since the monster only shows up when it's dark, that means that as long as I have the computer with me, I'll be able to keep it at bay. The only issue is finding the exit. I thought about the corridor from before. Turning corridors won't lead to anything anymore. That means that the way out is between one of the 6 doors. I've tried the first 5 doors, with the first 4 locked. Could the exit be on the 6th door? Or could it be in one of the previous 4 doors? My mind squirmed as I thought about all possible scenarios. The best-case scenario was clearly the 6th door opening and me finding the exit. But would things really be that easy? I hope so. But if it wasn't, my heart sank. A thought crossed my mind, and I started to shiver. Don't tell me I'll have to defeat that thing, right? My chest felt heavier at the thought. However, pressing my lips together, I let out a long breath and increased the brightness of the computer. The room grew brighter, and I turned the laptop to face my way. Without hesitation, I started to type on the laptop. Takakaka. Within the silence that pressed over the room, the sound of the keyboard strokes echoed across the entire room as I got to work. The entire process took no longer than a minute, and by the time I was done, I checked the time left. 7 minutes of battery life left. I'll make do. I turned the computer around and lowered the brightness again. Then, taking another deep breath, I stood up. All right. I nervously looked around me. I hope this works. With my back facing the wall, I kept the computer screen turned away from me as I moved sideways towards the entrance of the room. Eventually reaching it, I leaned my head forward to stare at the computer and at the same time reach for the knob. The moment the lights on the corridor switched on, I turned the knob and moved into the corridor. Without wasting a single second, I moved toward the sixth door and reached for the knob. Click! But as expected, the moment I tried to open the door, it refused to budge. Shit! My heart sank at the realization. As expected, things aren't that easy. I quickly looked at my surroundings before shifting my attention towards the computer. The cameras were still working, and I saw myself standing in the middle of the corridor with my gaze locked on the computer. And then eventually, flick! The lights turned off. A faint humming sound echoed in the air as I stared at the computer. But the silence was soon broken. Ta-ka-ka-ka! The heavy sound of steps echoed in the air, sprinting my way at rapid speeds. In that moment, staring through the cameras, I saw it. Appearing by the end of the hall was a shadow. The moment the lights turned off, it stared in my direction and sprinted towards me at full speed. By the time it took me to breathe, it was already upon me, and I quickly moved the computer in its direction. A bright light manifested, and the shadow disappeared. I was just about to sigh in relief when, HAA, I felt a hot breath running down the back of my neck. My entire body shivered, but at the same time, got you. I slammed my finger down on one of the laptop keys, activating the code I had previously typed in, then whipped it behind me in one motion. The laptop flared to life. Flick! Flick! The screen stuttered, light then dark. Light then dark. I spun around. It was there. The shadow stood inches away, arms reaching for my throat, its body twitching in and out of existence, trapped in the strobe of flickering light like some sort of glitched-out character. Now, I didn't hesitate. I clenched my free hand into a fist and drove it straight into the shadow's face. Bang! Timing it perfectly with the darkness, my fist hit something solid, and the shadow quickly fell to the ground, its features distorting. I didn't stop. I moved forward, adrenaline drowning out fear. I kicked down on the shadow, again and again, timing every strike with the flicker of the screen. Bang, bang. I didn't know how long I kept going. Blow after blow, each timed with the flicker of the light. My body moved on instinct, drained yet unwilling to stop. By the time I collapsed to my knees, gasping for air, the shadow was no longer fighting back. It twitched weakly on the ground, its body glitching on the ground. I stared, chest heaving. Ha! Ha! Flick! The ceiling light flicked once more, casting the room in a dull, sickly glow. An ever-present humming sound lingered in the air. I slumped to the floor, my mind barely registering the situation. Did I do it? I turned my head slowly, eyes scanning the place where the shadow had been. Still, silent, gone. I moved forward just barely. And then, flash, a notification flickered across my vision. Basic node, containment vessel activated. Ranked spirit, wandering nightwalker acquired. What? I stared at the notification in front of me with wide eyes. I'm not seeing things, am I? I rubbed my eyes for good measure. Even then, no change occurred. The notification remained the same, and I felt my expression change. Wandering Nightwalker acquired. I licked my lips and waited for the lights to flick back to darkness. Flick! As the world around me plunged into darkness, I immediately pulled the laptop close, eyes locked on the camera feeds. But this time, nothing. No twisted silhouette creeping through the corridors. No echo of rushing footsteps. Just still frames and a suffocating silence. Since it's no longer present, it must mean three things. I beat it up to the point where it was now too scared to approach me. It is hiding somewhere, waiting to lunge at me, or I have somehow managed to capture it. The truth was already right before my very eyes. And yet, I still struggled to believe it. Flick! Light returned, and I helped myself up. Looking around, I walked towards the nearest door and turned the doorknob. Click! It was just unfortunate that the door was still locked. I stood in silence for a brief moment before looking at the notification again. A thought crossed my mind, and I turned my attention towards the computer. I pressed on a mouse pad and scrolled a timestamp, turning it back to the exact time that I had started beating up the strange shadow. There! Finding the right time, I clicked the mouse pad and watched the scene. Looking at it now, this did look a lot more dangerous than I expected. Thank God my plan worked. Staring at myself beat up the strange, shadowy creature, I wiped the cold sweat that had formed on my forehead. It only dawned on me now just how dangerous what I had done was. If not for the fact that my idea worked, I probably would have been strangled to death. That was unless I was somehow rescued. My brow suddenly rose. Staring at the computer screen, my head unknowingly leaned closer as my eyes squinted. What the? I paid close attention to the screen, slowing down the replay as my eyes locked onto the shadowy figure that was on the floor. Trapped by the computer's constant flickering and thoroughly beaten by me, it twitched on the ground. I kept my eyes focused on it until... There! The lights flickered, and I saw a faint black shadow shoot towards my arm. My arm? A sudden chill crawled across my skin, creeping up my spine. Instinctively, I lowered my gaze to my arm. And then, I saw it. My expression changed and my breath caught in my throat. A strange, dark mark was coiled around my arm, almost like a tattoo. I reached out, but the mark seemed to squirm just out of my touch. What the hell is this? Seeing that there was no danger, I quickly calmed down and carefully eyed the strange black marking. The more I looked at it, the stranger it felt to me. And then, flick, the lights turned off and my vision faded. However, it was at that moment that the marking stopped moving. Even though I couldn't see it, I felt it, and my lips pursed. I thought back to the notification and soon pressed on the marking. The air suddenly grew colder, sending shivers down my entire body. I instinctively shrank up as I grew alert. That was when I felt it, a presence. It materialized before me, shifting, dark, like a shadow that had taken form. I couldn't make out any distinct features, but I could feel its eyes on me. The black marking on my arm faded, retreating into my skin as if it had never been there to begin with. I raised my head to meet the shadow's gaze. It stood in silence, watching me, waiting for me. I stared at it for a second before licking my lips as my mouth felt strangely dry. Then my lips parted. Help me find the exit. The shadow remained still. It didn't move as the silence returned, my entire body tensing as a result. Did it not work? Does it not listen to me? What if it attacks me? What if? Step. The gentle sound of a single step shattered the silence. I snapped my gaze to the laptop screen, my pulse quickening. There it was, the shadow, right on the screen, a few inches away from me. It moved slowly, its figure gliding across the floor like smoke. My breath caught in my throat as its long, slender finger extended, reaching toward the keyhole of the first door. It hovered there for almost too long, then began to turn. Click! A gentle click resounded in the air. At that moment, I understood. I did it. I had completed the trial. How much time left? It should be coming out soon, right? Yes. Did anyone ask for help yet? None. Not enough time has passed for that yet. Are you sure? Kyle. The section chief paused, his chair turning around as he looked at him with an annoyed look. That look changed rather quickly as he soon smiled and kicked the air. Shut up, or I'll kick you. Kyle forced a smile then, quickly shutting his mouth. He had actually been kicked before by him, so he knew it was anything but nice. He then shifted his attention towards the monitors in front of the section chief. There was all sorts of data and information on the monitors. Though they didn't directly show what was happening inside, they made sure to display any anomaly that may be occurring within the trials. He should be doing fine, right? The reason for Kyle's nervousness was obvious. Seth. For whatever reason, Seth suddenly wanted to participate in the trial, leaving Kyle at a complete loss. This wasn't just some random simulation. It was a real trial, and even though it was of the lowest rank, it was without a doubt dangerous. There was no guarantee that no accident would occur, and that made him worried, especially since he was so scared of scary things. The section's chief voice abruptly captured Kyle's attention as his head flicked towards him. Sitting by the control panel, the section chief leaned forward while drumming his fingers on the desk. Calmly scanning the analytics, he mumbled, "The first 10 minutes are up. There should still be another 10 minutes before the first candidate comes out. So far, everything looks all right. I'm rather surprised your friend is still inside. He must have some great stamina. He does. As far as Kyle was aware, Seth practically had no stamina. He rarely worked out, spending most of his time on his computer. He didn't believe for 1 second that he had enough stamina to last for long. After all, Kyle had undergone the same trial in the past. He knew just how hard it was. You're worrying quite a bit. That's quite unlike you. A soft voice pulled him from his thoughts. He turned around, and there she was, Zoe, casually leaning against the wall. Her gaze was glued to her phone, fingers moving quickly as she appeared to be playing some sort of game. Ting! Tisk! Following a soft chime, she clicked her tongue and pulled her phone away. Judging from her annoyed expression, she probably lost. She shook her head and looked up at Kyle. Is he the guy you said grew up with you? Yes. Interesting. I didn't think you'd know someone else who would want to enter this industry. Oh no. Noticing that she was misunderstanding, Kyle corrected her. Actually, he's not here as a talent. Huh. Zoe gave Kyle a weird look. He's not. No. Then what the hell is he doing in the trial? I want to know that too. Kyle massaged his head. His head hurt whenever he thought about Seth's impulsive decision. He's supposed to be here to observe and learn so that he could develop better games, but I didn't think he'd go this far. Games. Zoe's head snapped up. Her eyes glinted with interest. Your friend develops games? Yeah. Kyle pursed his lips before adding. Horror games. Oh. Kyle watched as the interest quickly faded from Zoe's face as she nodded her head. I see. Good for him. She lowered her head and pulled out her phone again. I hope he learned something from the trial. If he can get a click. A sudden click echoed in the air, attracting the attention of everyone present. As the heads turned towards the door that led to the trial, a figure calmly walked out, a laptop squeezed in between his armpits. It was the man in question as his calm gaze scanned the surroundings. Eventually, his gaze fell on the section chief, and he pulled the laptop out of his armpit. I took this by accident. Who do I hand this over to? Finally reaching the exit, I walked out of the door and felt several pairs of eyes directed my way. It was silent as they all looked at me. Is there something on my face? Their gazes felt somewhat uncomfortable. But then, I suddenly recalled something and handed over the laptop to the section chief. I took this by accident. Who do I hand this over to? I have been worrying about this ever since I came out of the weird place. Though it wasn't a pricey model, it still looked somewhat expensive. I didn't want to get charged for it. I couldn't afford it. Oh yes. The section chief retrieved the laptop and placed it on the desk. He nodded his head while mumbling, How kind of you to hand the laptop back. It's very kind. Very. His expression quickly shifted before he slammed his hand against the table. Bang. That's not the point. I flinched, turning my attention towards the section chief, who stood up abruptly. How did you manage to clear the trial? What did you do? His face was filled with shock. This is the fastest I've ever seen someone clear this trial. How does this make sense? What? I looked at the section chief, confused. He didn't see? How did you get out of the trial so fast? I used the computer, I replied, pausing briefly as my eyes drifted toward the monitors. But then I froze. The monitors, they didn't display any footage belonging to the trial. If anything, it contained all sorts of different metrics that seemed completely unrelated to the trial. As if understanding my thoughts, the section chief clicked his tongue. I wouldn't be asking if I saw, would I? That makes sense. So, like I said, I used the computer. I reached for the laptop and flipped the lid open. Without wasting a second, I launched the program I had coded, the screen flickering on and off. Turning the laptop slightly, I angled it toward the section chief. Since whatever that thing inside was scared of light, I just created a program that would make the laptop flicker on and off, essentially trapping it. After that, it was rather easy. For obvious reasons, I omitted certain information, but it wasn't like the method I was currently describing was wrong. In that sense, I didn't have to worry about them finding any loopholes in my story. I'm not saying it's perfect, but this was the best I could do with my current abilities. I finished there and waited for the section chief to speak. Instead, I was just met with silence as the eyes of everyone present locked in my direction. The silence felt uncomfortable. Until, wow, holy shit, you could do it this way. Zoe's voice cut through the silence as she found herself unable to hold her tongue. Her words snapped the section chief out of his thoughts as he sat back down on his seat and analyzed the program on the computer. Why didn't I think about this before? He looked at a complete loss before suddenly looking back at me. Seeing his gaze, I stepped back. I suddenly started to have a bad premonition. Say, are you sure you want to just be an observer? He closed the laptop and moved closer to me. I took another step back. Look, you're clearly quite talented. The fact that you were able to come up with a way that we hadn't even thought of before shows that you're talented. It would be a waste if you didn't join us. About that, I looked at Kyle for help, but instead, all I received was a baffled and shocked expression from him. The benefits we provide are quite high. Our signing bonuses are quite high. You'll be given an adequate strategy, and I'm thankful for your offer, but no. Seeing that no one was going to help me, I directly cut the director off. I'm rather scared of horror stuff. The section chief gave me a face, his expression seeming to say, "What sort of bullshit are you spouting?" I coughed. It's true. He still didn't seem to believe me. I also like my job. The system made it so I had to develop games. If I joined the guild, then I knew it would be impossible for me to have time to develop the games. Perhaps in the future, but for now, no. All right. The section chief looked like he had more to say, but eventually accepted my stance and just nodded. Since you don't want to join, I can't force you. It's a pity, though. I think you really do have some talent. Thank you. In the end, the section chief didn't pursue the matter any longer, and I quietly walked back towards Kyle, leaning back on the wall and sliding down. That was when I let out a long breath and finally relaxed. I really thought I was going to die. Every second within the trial felt agonizing. I wasn't sure what came over me then, but looking back at it now, I really must have lost it. I don't want to have anything to do with horror for the next week or so. This was a big wish of mine, but thinking about the monster that was still haunting me, my stomach churned. So much that I felt the urge to go to the bathroom. I was just about to when a certain voice reached my ears. Why didn't you accept the offer? The voice belonged to none other than Zoe, standing with her arms crossed and her back casually pressed against the wall, eyes fixed on me with a subtle frown. The section chief rarely praises people. You should be grateful and take the opportunity. Many people would be dying for the very same opportunity. I frowned, listening to her words. What sort of argument was this? Indeed, she was just like the game settings, quite blunt and sheltered, a princess of sorts. Then again, after what she went through, I'm rather surprised she still acts like this. Is that so? I just gave her a casual reply, hoping she'd leave me alone, but that only seemed to annoy her more. Knowing just how quickly things could spiral, I rose to my feet, cutting her off before she could utter a single word. Let me be. I don't have the luxury of a choice, unlike you. What is that supposed to mean? I gave her a quick glance before mumbling, I don't get to rely on my rich parents when things don't go my way. If I did, I wouldn't be worrying about some stupid medicine. Furthermore, the system prevented me from having such a choice. What did you say? Her entire body seemed to stiffen at my words. I probably hit the mark with my comment, but it wasn't like I was lying. And more than anything, I really needed to go to the bathroom. Say it again. Say, if you don't mind. I sidestepped and moved past Kyle as he looked at me with a weird expression. He looked a little stiff, too, alternating his gaze between me and her. Was he still shocked by my performance? Probably. Whatever the case is, I really need to go. Sha! The cold water ran down the sink as I washed my face. KH! A groan suddenly slipped from my mouth. Slowly lifting my head and staring at my own features, my teeth clenched as I held onto the sides of the sink, keeping my body upright as my hands started to tremble. I was having another episode. Damn it. It wasn't a serious one, but it was still there. I had to keep myself steady in order to keep myself from falling. The pain lingered at the back of my mind while my arms continued to shudder. It wasn't anything serious, but it made it hard for me to keep steady. As my chest heaved up and down repeatedly, I swallowed in silence. As expected, I really do hate horror. The attacks had become even more frequent than before. all due to the anxiety and fear that I had experienced recently. This creak. The soft creak of the door opening pulled me from my thoughts. I turned my head slowly, my chest slowly calming down. And then I saw him, Miles, walking in with no expression. He felt a little different than usual. However, the moment he caught sight of me, his expression changed and dimples appeared on his face. "Oh, you were here." He strolled to the sink beside me, casually pumping soap into his hands. "I heard you came out first in the trials." "Oh, yes." I gave a short nod, trying to steady my breath. "That's impressive. Thank you. What about you?" "Second." "I got second." "Oh." A thin, fleeting silence settled over us. It held for a beat too long, until Miles broke it again. "I thought you weren't going to participate, right?" I licked my lips, shaking my head. "It just happened like that." "It just happened? Can something like that just happen?" What? Never mind. It's good that you did well." He smiled again, turning on the tap and washing his hands with calm, rhythmic motions. I stood in silence, the previous conversation lingering in my mind. Something felt off. I glanced sideways at him, searching, but nothing stood out. He just calmly dried his hands with a pair of tissues. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling gnawing at me. Miles! 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 From the moment I met him, something about him had unsettled me, and I still couldn't place it. "I'll be leaving now." He flashed that same gentle smile, dimples and all, then reached for the door. Just as he pulled it open, "Hey." He paused and turned back toward me. "What is it about?" I hesitated, then finally asked, "I forgot to ask you before. What's your last name?" "My last name." He blinked, confused for a moment. Then, with one hand on the door, he answered, "Holmes." Clank. The door clicked shut behind him, and the bathroom returned to stillness. I remained where I stood, eyes closed, as the name echoed through my mind. I see. Suddenly it all clicked. The strange sense of recognition, the unease, the familiarity. Miles. He was another game character that appeared in one of the games I had previously worked on. Miles Holmes. He didn't register in my mind immediately. It wasn't because I had forgotten about his character or anything of the sort. Miles wasn't a character that I could easily forget. How could I not with the way he was designed? He was ruthless, psychotic, and two-faced. He was the type of character who took advantage of others, stealing their credit in order to push himself forward. This sort of setting made sense considering the game he was in. It was a ruthless zombie survival game where he had to steal and take from others in order to survive. There were several reasons the game didn't succeed, but if I had to pinpoint one, I'd say it was the graphics. They weren't exactly impressive. A lot of the game's budget was invested in the storyline, neglecting the graphics as a result. I had brought up the problem several times with management, but they all responded the same way. The story will make up for the lack of graphics. Don't worry about it. Just do your job. I could only retreat in silence then. No wonder I couldn't recognize him immediately. Zoe was a lot easier to recognize since she was the direct result of Dead Rising failure, prompting the company to shift to a more graphic-based design. But even that failed. Well, it's not like all the games failed, but why are the main characters of the two worst games here? I was really struggling to understand this. Not only was Zoe present, but so was Miles. Just one was enough to give me a headache, but two, and Miles of all people. If previously I had any lingering thoughts about joining the guild, such thoughts quickly faded. There was simply no way I would join the guild with him here. I didn't want to work in a place where I had to worry about getting backstabbed at any given second. Never. I'm telling you he didn't mean his words. Seth. He just recently got fired, so he might be a little moody. He might also not know. He recently got laid off? Yes. That's why I had him come here. I see. You're not going to do anything to him, are you? Zoe looked at Kyle's stiff expression and didn't answer immediately. However, after a brief pause, she shook her head. I won't be. Oh, good. Kyle looked visibly relieved by her words. I know Seth well. He can be a little careless at times, but he doesn't mean any harm. You also won't have to see much of him since he won't be working with us directly. MHM, I figured. Zoe's tone was light. Her voice didn't carry much emotion. This seemed to ease Kyle somewhat. That's good. I'll go check up on him. He probably was also shaken up from the trial. All right. Zoe watched as Kyle left. Her mind drifted towards his last words, and her expression turned dark. Shaken from a trial? That was laughable. Not only had he cleared the trial faster than anyone before, but the moment he came out, he looked completely unfazed, as if he hadn't just beaten some of the best recruits around. He was anything but shaken. Suddenly, her stomach started to twist. I don't get to rely on my rich parents when things don't go my way. The man's words echoed in her mind again, forcing her stomach to twist further. It wasn't long ago when the helicopter crashed, stranding her and her family on that darned island. Those were some of the darkest days of her life. Every day was hell, with her fighting for survival in hopes of finding her parents. But unfortunately, she wasn't able to make it in time. The moment she arrived, it was already too late. Her parents were dead. No, they were... Zoe clenched her teeth, her calm expression almost crumbling. It was hard for her to quell her anger, especially since she felt mocked. Their death had made the news all over the world. Given her parents' influence and power, there was no way he wouldn't know. She didn't buy Kyle's story. He was too nice for his own good. His name was Seth, right? Zoe quietly nodded her head, memorizing his name. It's a pity he won't join the guild. The moment the orientation was over, everyone was brought back to the -5th floor. As opposed to when we first arrived, there were quite a lot more people, each moving towards different areas as the chairs and projector screen were long gone. Instead, the place now looked like some sort of office lobby. In fact, even the lobby for my previous company was better. The section chief paused and looked in our direction. The general results of the trial were quite good. Most of you managed to pass with a few failures. There's no harm in failure. So long as you learn from his experience, everything will be fine. However, quickly scanning a few documents in his hand, he turned his attention back to us. This time, his voice turned grave. I won't be able to guarantee you'll be able to live if you fail again. His words brought the atmosphere to a standstill. I stood at the back of the group, taking in their reactions. It didn't really have anything to do with me. As of this moment, my entire attention was focused on my mission. Game. I had to develop a game quickly, and I needed to make it scary enough to scare the people of this world. The more I thought about my situation, the more bitter I felt. How the hell am I supposed to do this? Not only was I by myself, but I didn't even have that much time to develop it. Well, now that we have sorted out the hard part, I'll quickly allocate all of you to your teams. Once again, all attention fell on the section chief. I was also intrigued, but since it had nothing to do with me, I could only watch in silence as one by one, the people around me were allocated into different teams. There's no real distinction between each team. They're all equally good, so don't think too much about the team you've been put in. By the time he was done allocating each member, a total of 7 groups had formed. A team leader will be here with you shortly. In the meantime, do whatever you want. Get acquainted with your future colleagues, or doom scroll on your phone. You've already done the hard part. Today is the end of your first day. And with those final words, the section chief excused himself and left for a different area. It was only after he left that the noise started. I just remained standing at the back, calmly observing my surroundings. Until, what are you doing? Kyle's voice reached my ears. Turning my head, I saw him beckon me with his hand. Going where exactly? What do you mean, where? To your office, of course. Office. I'm getting an office? So, what do you think? We stopped in front of a small room. Staring at the space that could barely fit a single desk and chair, I looked at Kyle. Is this your idea of an office space? Kyle's face twitched as he looked away before bringing his fist to his mouth and coughing. Well, I may be doing well recently, but this is the best I can do given that you're not officially part of the guild. And it's not like this place is bad at all. Sure, it's small, but at least it's isolated, so you'll be able to work on your game without any distractions. I guess. I looked at the gray carpet beneath and the flickering light above, casting a dim light over the room. There was no window, and the wooden table looked a little worn out. This felt more like a janitor's room than an office. Then again, who was I to complain? This will do. I sat down on the chair and retrieved my laptop from my bag. Time waited for no one. I needed to get started with my project before it was too late. I also recalled something. About what the... Do you really not know? What? About what happened to Zoe? What happened to Zoe? Did something happen to her? Or was he talking about what happened before? Huh. As if noticing my confusion, Kyle sighed. Knowing just how out of touch with reality you are sometimes, I can probably guess you didn't know. Didn't know what? What the hell was he talking about? No, wait. Zoe. A thought suddenly crossed my mind. Her parents are dead. I felt the words get stripped out of my mouth the moment I heard Kyle's words. Whipping out my phone, I quickly searched for any related information. It didn't take long for me to find several related articles. Breaking. Tragedy hits Turlin Corporation. Chairman and family reported missing after island accident. Daughter survives. 8 News. Turlin Corporation faces collapse amid ongoing crisis. I closed my eyes after reading the first 2 headlines. Shit, I wasn't even surprised at this point. In fact, I should have seen this coming. There was nothing that said the character setting of those that entered this world was going to be the same as in the games. As expected, you really didn't know. Pulling my attention away from my phone, I looked at Kyle, who sighed. I already told her that you probably didn't know, but it's best if you clear up the misunderstanding yourself. There's no way she... I cut myself off mid-sentence, just before saying, there's no way she'd take my apology seriously. What did you say? Oh, no, nothing. I'll try to do that when I have time. All right, Kyle nodded with visible relief. I'm not asking you to get along with her, but she's quite popular here. You won't have trouble with me here, but it's never good to get on her bad side. Oh, my lip twitched. I already knew that. I knew that better than anyone else. She was petty, really petty, to the point where I found myself questioning some of the choices that the design team had made during the game production. Nonetheless, it did seem like her personality was quite well received by the audience. The real failure stemmed from the ending. Well, since it looks like you've got the message, I'll get going. Kyle turned his wrist and checked the time. I have to leave since I still have some work to do. I'll see you later. All right. Kyle turned around and made his way towards the door of the room. After a little thought, with his hand hovering over the doorknob, he turned around with a concerned look. Another thing. What is it? You need to get some sleep? Kyle opened the door and shook his head. You look like a walking corpse. Clank. The door closed right after as he left. I sat in silence, unsure of what he meant. That was until I stared at my reflection in the computer screen and saw the deep bags beneath my eyes. Oh, I guess he isn't wrong. Shit. That also suddenly reminded me of the thing that I wanted to ask him. It was regarding entities that entered the human world. He said it would take a week for them to adapt to the world. Was that the case for all of them? Whatever. I'll ask him about later. I still had time left. For now, my main priority was creating the game. Now, then, booting up the laptop, I leaned back against the chair and sighed. How exactly am I going to go about this? The moment Kyle stepped out of the cramped office where he had left Seth, he found himself in the corner of a spacious room bustling with activity. Dozens of people moved about, surrounded by cubicles, some hunched over desks as they scribbled away on reports. As odd as the scene looked, this was the field agent section. In other words, it was the area where those who entered the gates were found. Because the nature of their job required heavy research and analysis, most of them actually spent more time investigating gates and reading reports than actually entering gates and dealing with anomalous entities or objects. This was the primary reason why the place looked like a regular office space. Kyle. Just then, a figure walked up to Kyle. He was a tall man with Asian features, about the same height as Kyle, with his hair neatly trimmed and a mole by the side of his chin. Terrence Lee had only neared Kyle when he stopped and stared at the small door next to Kyle. His brows raised. Is the guy you brought in there? He is. When Terrence asked about Seth, Kyle tensed slightly. Though they got along well, both being part of the same unit, Delta Squad, the question made him a little alert. Contrary to what Kyle believed, Terrence just laughed. I'm still surprised you managed to convince that stingy team leader to let you have that room. Then again, it was just a smoking room before, so I guess it makes sense. You make it sound easy. Kyle gave Terrence a wry smile. He made it sound easy, but he really had fought hard to convince the team leader to give him that room. Their team leader. How could a person be so greedy? Putting that aside, I'm hearing a lot of things about the guy you brought. You are. After the initial surprise, Kyle calmed down. By now, almost everyone should have heard of what Seth had done. Kyle was almost sure everyone within the company already knew. What Seth had achieved was nothing short of astonishing, setting a new record in the beginner trial. Doing so in a completely unprecedented way and without any powers was bound to make waves. There was no way the news of it wouldn't spread. Of course I did. All the rookies were talking about him. Oh, Kyle felt a little intrigued. What did they say about him? That he was lucky. Kyle's face stiffened upon hearing Terrence's words. Lucky? What do why? Come on, Kyle. Don't tell me you actually think it wasn't just dumb luck that got him through. Terrence gave Kyle a weird look as his gaze swept the door to Seth's office. Kyle could see from Terrence's eyes that he meant no malice. But even then, I don't. He shook his head. There was simply no way it was dumb luck. He had been present when he had heard Seth's explanation. Seeing your face, it really does seem like you believe it wasn't luck. That's because it wasn't. Kyle forced a smile. Seeing him act like this, Terrence shrugged his shoulders and changed the topic. That aside, I heard that he's some sort of game developer. He is. And he's here to study and research for his game? Pretty much. Kyle nodded, and Terrence's look turned even more peculiar. With his attention directed to Seth's door, he sighed and shook his head. I heard that he got offered a position by the section chief. He should have taken the offer. Hearing his words, Kyle frowned. Why? Why else? Terrence looked at Kyle with an expression that seemed to say, Are you seriously asking me the obvious? There's a reason why most horror games are failing these days. Nobody gets scared by them anymore. I mean, who the hell gets scared by that stuff anyway? We go through things that are far more scary than that nonsense. No, but Kyle wanted to argue, but found himself unable to. Terrence made valuable points. Points that even he himself agreed deep down. Nonetheless, he still believed in Seth. He definitely was capable of developing a good game. Your friend is setting himself up for failure. You should talk to him about taking the offer before it's too late. Kyle bit his lips and was just about to shake his head when Terrence raised his hand to stop him. How about this? Terrence looked in the direction of Seth's room. Call me up when your friend finishes his game. I'll be the first beta tester. What? You don't believe in your friend? Kyle didn't know how to reply then. It wasn't that he didn't believe in Seth, but it was just that Terrence had been in this industry for quite a while. While Terrence's rank was lower than his, he was still quite reputable among their team. If someone like him tested the game, then don't worry about it, Kyle. Terrence patted Kyle on the shoulder with a laugh. Think of it as me doing a favor for your friend. You just want the room, don't you? Terrence just smiled and let go of Kyle's shoulder. Just let me know when he's done. I can't wait to test out his game. And with that, he bid Kyle goodbye and left. Kyle could only watch as his back retreated before he closed his eyes and sighed with a complicated look. Maybe this isn't a bad thing. What makes a good horror game? Is it the constant jump scares or the blood and gore that come along with the scares? It's none of that. I sat in a daze, staring blankly at my computer while the hum of the fans echoed through the otherwise silent room. Several hours had slipped by since I first sat down and opened my computer, yet in all that time, 2 long hours, I'd done nothing but stare blankly at the screen. Developing a game wasn't difficult. With the current available tools and applications, I was confident in developing a playable game. But that wasn't the issue. The issue was making the game scary, especially in a world where scary games had less effect on the normal folk. This is so much harder than I expected. I scratched the back of my head, feeling a headache coming. For a horror game to truly be good, it needed to perfect several elements. 1. The atmosphere. Tension was needed to build up before the jump scare. 2. Sound and visuals. Perhaps some of the most crucial elements lay in how the game engaged the 5 human senses. Tapping into these, especially sound and music, was essential for crafting the perfect horror experience. The right audio could unsettle, mislead, or completely immerse the player in dread. 3. Storytelling. This was crucial to instill a psychological seed in a player's mind. It was a developer's job to use that seed and grow it into something bigger. There were other elements that one needed to take into account when creating a horror game, but these 3 were generally the most important. Click. I pressed onto the mouse pad and opened UEngine. This was the main developer app that I used back at the old company to develop and program the games. Considering that I need to get this done as fast as possible, I should settle for something simpler. The good thing about UEngine was that it had a lot of available templates that I could use to develop the game. The coding could also be kept to a minimum. Regarding the game mechanics, in order to save time, those also had to be kept to a minimum. However, it wasn't necessary for the game to have complicated mechanics. All I need the character to do is move forward and run. I tapped my fingers against the table, deep in thought. The engine already provided sound and music, which meant the only pieces I was missing now were the storyline and the overall direction of the game. Should I use my most recent experiences as the baseline for the story and direction? I sat in silence for a few seconds before pursing my lips. Yes, that could work. There were two scenarios in my head. The first scenario was with the orchestra, and the second scenario was of the most recent trial. Of the two, the easiest one to develop was the second experience. The mechanics were simple, and so was the monster. With my current skill level, developing a monster on par with the conductor was almost impossible. In fact, I was still having trouble handling said conductor. For now, I could only settle for the second scenario. With everything planned out of my mind, I cracked my fingers and got to work. I had no time to waste. Asterisk. Like that for days past. Taka-kaka-kaka. The rapid clatter of keyboard keys echoed loudly through the room. My eyes began to strain from the relentless glare of the computer screen, my head starting to hurt as a result. Nonetheless, my gaze never wavered from the computer. And then, tack, done. With the last press of the keyboard, I pulled my hand back and stared at the product before it. It's still not done, but it should be playable now. I had incorporated everything I had learned from my recent experiences. While it wasn't an exact replica, I did my best to recreate the same atmosphere and tension I had felt, capturing as much of that essence as I could. The overall result was something that I was pleased with. Surely this will be enough to scare some people. I hoped that'd be the case and to talk. Just in time, the door opened, and Kyle came in. Seth, it's already 8. I'm done with work. Are you going to go? Kyle, you came at the perfect time. I stood up from my seat and walked towards Kyle, grabbing him by the shoulders and pushing him into my chair. Wait, what are you? Quiet down. I just need you to help me out with something. I pushed him down and clicked on a mouse pad. Here, this is... Kyle's brows furrowed for a brief moment before they suddenly widened as he realized what was going on. His neck snapped in my direction. You're already done? This quick? Don't games usually take a lot longer to develop? The game isn't finished yet. This is just a framework, but it should still be playable. I want your honest feedback, no matter what. This was crucial. Given that Kyle was someone who dealt with this kind of thing regularly, he was the perfect test subject for the game. If it scared him, I was confident it would have the same effect on most people. Then again, his tolerance for fear was higher than most, so there was a chance he might not get scared. Still, I figured he'd be able to tell if a normal person would feel anything. If he so much as flinched, that'd be enough for me. All right. In some way, Kyle also seemed a little excited to try the game. How should I play this? What do I do? Here. I gave Kyle a quick rundown of the game and started it. Soon, the room fell into silence as I watched Kyle play the game. He's going to get scared, right? The screen flashed, and Kyle's fingers moved. I stared in silence, watching Kyle attentively. I wanted to catch even the smallest glimpse of a reaction from him. I had put a lot of effort into the game, to the point where I hadn't slept much in the past few days. I was somewhat happy with what I had developed, combining every aspect of my recent experiences. And yet, game over. Oh, I lost. Not a single reaction. My heart sank as I stared at Kyle. He had a wry smile on his face as he looked at me and mumbled, "Let me try that again." I gave him a small nod and watched him try the game again. Like before, I stared intently at him, waiting for a reaction from him. Just a flinch, some sort of trembling, hesitation. But, game over. It was the same. No reaction whatsoever. Silence settled over the office as Kyle stared at the screen, trying to start the game again. Let me turn up the sound. Oh. I closed my eyes and nodded, feeling a tight knot in my stomach. This time, I didn't look. I didn't need to. His reaction spoke volumes. Even if I had someone else try it, someone who wasn't Kyle, I feared the result would be the same. The game. It wasn't scary at all. Shit. I sat in my office, lost in a daze, replaying Kyle's reactions over and over in my mind. I had no idea how long I stayed like that, but eventually I rubbed my face, a groan slipping from my lips. Not even a single flinch. Kyle, he played the game a total of 15 times. And yet, not once in all those attempts did he flinch, make a sound, or show even the slightest hint of fear. I knew because I stood by his side the entire time, hoping for something. Anything, but nothing. In the end, Kyle showed not one single reaction. The next part was awkward. He glanced back at me, clearly struggling to muster some words of encouragement. But in the end, what came out felt more like an insult than anything else. It's not bad. He obviously meant no harm, but his eyes told me everything that I needed to know. Maybe it's just him. He is, after all, used to dealing with scary scenarios. I tried to convince myself that the problem was Kyle, but playing the game again, the previous emotions that I felt for it were no longer there. There's something missing. There was something about the game that was fundamentally missing. It wasn't because it was still just a framework, but more because the game itself lacked the quality to elevate it to a level where it could scare people. But what? What exactly was missing? I wonder if I can check what sort of rating the current game I've developed is. I scanned through my computer and eventually opened the system app. Game developer, Seth Thorne. Status, First Order. Black small square basic node, containment vessel. Items, black small square blank mask. Black small square spectral glasses. Shop locked. Quests, unlocked, available 1. Black small square develop a game with a 1-star rating. Reward, unlocks the shop. Develop games. Gentle Whispers rating 0.5. Work in progress rating. Work in progress. Immediately, my eyes fell on the bottom of the app. That was where I saw the work in progress area, alongside the question mark rating. It looks like it doesn't give a rating unless the game is fully completed. It was a bit disappointing to see. It would have been really helpful if it had a feature that showed the game's rating as I progressed. Wait, a thought suddenly occurred to me, and I started to type in the chat box beneath the interface in the app. Is it possible to tell the progress of the game that I'm developing? Ever since the first scenario, the system had rarely revealed itself. The only way I could communicate with it was through that strange app. And sure enough, I received an answer not long after. Yes, such a feature is available. That's nice. I was pleasantly surprised by the piece of information. If that's the case, what is the current rating of my game? You don't have the clearance available for such a feature. Please try again in the future. I opened my mouth, but soon closed it. Why did I even expect anything from this? Can you at least tell me if my game currently meets the criteria? It doesn't. The reply came out blunt, but at the very least, I knew that my previous feeling wasn't wrong. The game, it wasn't scary at all. But what exactly was it missing? I wonder if I can ask the system for any clues. I began typing on a laptop, asking all sorts of questions from what was lacking to ways to make it better. However, the system made its stance very clear from start. You have all the tools necessary to create such a game. Please keep working hard. That doesn't help me at all. I ruffled my hair in annoyance. It became obvious to me that the system wasn't going to help me out at all with the game development aspect. However, it wasn't as though it was completely useless. You have all the tools necessary to create such a game. The system judged that I was capable of creating such a game with what I currently had at my disposal. What I needed to do was figure out how to use such tools to my advantage. A mask, sunglasses, a strange app. I began listing everything I'd received from the system, and as I quietly reflected on it all, my expression grew increasingly grim. Regardless of how much I tried to think about it, nothing really seemed to be useful. My mind was completely blank. But then, what about you? Can you help me? I looked directly towards a marking on my arm as it wiggled the moment I brought my sleeve down and exposed it to the light from above. Indeed, ever since the trial, the Night Walker had continued to remain with me, stuck as a thick black marking that circled across my arm, seemingly looking like a tattoo. I had yet to release it in the open like in the trial, but I felt it in my mind that it would listen to most of my commands. It also made me wonder about this node thing. What exactly was a node? It almost feels like a skill, but at the same time, I'm not too sure. I was also not entirely sure about what the containment vessel node did. My best guess was that it allowed me to capture anomalies and turn them to my side. However, I was still unsure of how it worked. What was the criteria for acquisition, and was there a limit to how many I could acquire? What about the strength limit? Could I capture any anomalies regardless of strength? There were too many questions and too few answers. Letting out a long sigh, I once again shifted my attention towards my computer. It was already late into the night, and the hum of the fan was louder than ever. I could feel my computer starting to overheat as I closed down the app and once again shifted my attention towards the game. I don't think there's anything wrong with the game. It's more like there's a lack of tension. There was no music in the game, only a few sound effects, the most prominent being the sound of footsteps and the increasingly labored breathing that worsened as time went on. I felt that music, or anything similar, was completely unnecessary given the nature of the game. It was meant to recreate the scenario I had experienced, and the lack of sound served to make it more authentic, to build up tension. But was that the right way of thinking? Did I have to make it exactly like my experience? No, not exactly. I felt my brows furrow. However, I shook my head shortly after. Even if I do want to add music, I can't. The biggest and most important reason for the lack of music was simple. It was because I was afraid that the conductor would once again appear. For the past several days, I'd kept my distance from anything that could produce even the slightest hint of music, afraid it would show up. And now that 3 days had passed, no way. I'm not sure if it's worse than a few days ago, but I'm sure that if someone hears the moo, my words came to an abrupt halt as a thought crossed my mind. Just a thought. And yet, the moment the thought crossed my mind, my entire body froze. It felt as if I'd been plunged into the coldest depths of the sea, every muscle stiffening with sudden dread. No, I shook my head, my lips quivering. Definitely not. Anything but that. The answer to my solution was right under my nose. The more I thought about it, the more likely it felt that this was the missing piece to my game. And yet, I desperately wanted to be wrong. I feel like puking already. Taking a deep breath, I stood up and walked towards the door of the room, opening slightly and peeking my head out. There was no one outside. The office space lights were off, leaving everything submerged in an oppressive darkness. The silence felt heavy, stifling the air. Clearly, everyone had already gone home, and when I checked the time, I realized it was already 1:07 a.m. I was the only one left of the guild. I took a deep breath and looked back at my desk. My lips quivered as I tried my best to think of other ways to solve my situation, but the more my thoughts lingered over the solution I'd found, the more I felt that it was the only way for me to move forward. All right, every part of me wanted to refuse the situation, to look for another solution. However, I didn't have the luxury to think of another solution. This felt like the most likely solution, and I had no other choice but to commit to it. It was just that. I might die. Indeed, there was a very real chance that my actions could lead to my own death. And yet, remaining passive would also lead to my own death. I had no other option but to go through with my plan. At the very least, this was better than just waiting for an inevitable death. There are a few things that I need. First, I stepped out of the office and into the field agent area, weaving my way through the cubicles, the shadows seeming to stretch and shift with every corner I turned. The eerie emptiness made the space feel like it was closing in on me. Here, eventually, I found what I had been looking for. This should do. It was a long and thick rope. I pulled it a couple of times to make sure it was durable enough. It was only after a couple of tries that I nodded in satisfaction. Okay. Though I felt a little guilty for taking the rope, I planned to return it later. Even at a glance, I could tell this was no ordinary rope. This was probably what the field agents took with them during their gate missions. This place sure does look creepy at night. The silence alone was unsettling, but what truly disturbed me was the absence of anyone in such a vast, empty space. The stillness made it feel like the entire building was somehow growing, expanding, as if it were alive. The longer I stayed, the more uneasy I became. Once I gathered everything I needed, I hurried back to my office. Click! I locked the door behind me, the metallic click echoing louder than it should have. Taking a deep breath, I prepared myself for what was to come. Here goes nothing. I pushed the table away from the chair and placed my hand over the light switch. Taking a few deep breaths, I turned off the light. Click! My hands tingled as the darkness swallowed me from all sides. Turning on my phone, I made my way towards my seat and sat down. After which, I opened the recording device on my phone and set the recording to last for 5 minutes. This should be enough time. I took a nervous breath while setting the phone down. The plan was simple. I planned on recording the conductor's music in order to then attempt to use the soundtrack for the game. This was the solution that I had come up with after a lot of thinking. Thinking back to the cab ride a few days ago, it hit me, if I could channel that music and weave it into the game, I could create something truly remarkable. The thought made my heart race, but at the same time, it was incredibly risky. Not only was I unsure if I could record the effects of the music onto my phone, but I was also unsure if I could even survive the entire ordeal. It was for this reason that I set a 5-minute time limit. That would be enough for me to work on the game. Okay, I think I'm ready. I glanced down at my wrist and pressed on my arm. A cold wind swept past as a dark figure appeared before me. I quickly handed it the ropes I'd gathered just moments earlier and rested both hands on the armrest of the chair. Tie me up and make sure I can't harm myself. The shadow obeyed without question, moving silently to my side and securing the ropes around each of my wrists and ankles. By the time it was finished, I gave a few tentative tugs, but quickly realized I could barely move my body at all. It was very secure. Okay, this way I don't have to be afraid of harming myself. I still felt chills recalling the scenes from the first scenario. Lowering my head, I stared at the phone resting on the armrest. With a few swipes, I connected the music app to my computer. At the same time, I chose a song that lasted for approximately 5 minutes while turning off the continue play feature. The phone was like the last source of light in the darkroom. It felt like the only thing keeping me grounded and in place. Everything is ready. I licked my lips while shifting my attention towards the Nightwalker. A part of me was scared it might affect it as well. If that were the case, recalling it now was the safest choice. And so I did. The silence deepened, thickening in the air until it felt suffocating. I looked at my phone and took a deep breath. Then, after what felt like an eternity, I pressed play and started the recording. Ting, ting. It wasn't long before the music started playing. The melody from the song I was so familiar with reached my ears as I sat in silence, my limbs bound to the chair. I was waiting for the inevitable shift that only occurred when I was present. The wait felt like an eternity, each second stretching into what felt like hours. It was scarier than death itself, knowing that something was coming, but never knowing when. But then, it came, the inevitable shift, and the start of my 5-minute-long nightmare. The darkness swallowed me from all directions. Then the music slithered into my ears, soft at first, almost hypnotic, but the more I tried to block it out, the louder everything else became. Every sound exploded in my mind. The slow, splintering creak of the wooden chair beneath me, the strained groan of the rope, the shallow breaths escaping my lips. Each noise scraped against my nerves, crawling beneath my skin, until it felt like the only thing I could focus on. But soon, the music changed. A familiar melody started to play, and my entire body started to shiver. The temperature in the room dropped so suddenly that it stole the breath from my lungs. I turned my head, heart racing, half convinced I'd left a window open. But the moment my head turned, a deeper chill settled over me. There were no windows. There never had been. It's coming. I squeezed my eyes shut, gripping the armrest of the chair, my hand trembling as though something was creeping into my thoughts, threatening to take over. I just need to hold on for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. The rhythm began slow, almost gentle, but that only made it worse. The slower it pulsed, the more insidious it became, like it was lulling me into a trance. Each beat slipped deeper, weaving its way into my mind, pulling my thoughts along with it. I could hear my heartbeat now, loud, uneven, as if it were echoing from somewhere outside my own body. Thin, cold streaks slid down my face. Sweat. Tears. I couldn't tell, but the sensation felt amplified in the darkness. Each second that ticked felt agonizing. How long has it been? I wanted to check the time, but it was just as I was about to open my eyes that I heard a subtle clicking sound. My heartbeat accelerated. Click! The sound came from the direction of the door. Someone unlocked the door. The handle creaked as it turned, followed by a dull thud, the door slamming against the table I'd shoved in front of it. Clank! A pause followed, and then the door violently struck the table again. Bang! This time, it was louder than before, making my entire body flinch. But as if that wasn't enough. Bang! Bang! Once. Twice. Again. Each attempt more violent than the last, each thud echoing like a gunshot in the tight, airless room. The table rattled under the pressure, wood groaning, legs scraping across the floor. Whoever or whatever was out there wasn't just trying to get in. My eyes had already been open, and yet I couldn't see a thing. It was dark, too dark for me to see. I feel like puking. I really need to puke. My entire body trembled, seized by a fear so raw it made my skin feel too tight. With every slam of the door, my stomach twisted, flipping like it wanted to crawl out of me. The one trying to enter the room is most likely someone affected by the music or the conductor itself. Thankfully, it doesn't seem strong enough to break the door apart. It was unfortunate that I was sure there was no one else in the vicinity. This meant that, clank, I flinched and the pounding stopped. Silence. Then the music crept back in, louder now as the tempo switched. My arms began to twitch, small at first, then sharper, more erratic, as if the melody was pulling strings buried beneath my skin, pulling it to move in ways that were beyond my control. I suddenly started to recall the horrifying scenes in the first scenario, and my heart nearly leaped out of my chest. It's starting. It first started with a subtle itch on my face. It was subtle enough for me to ignore it first, but that quickly changed with the passing of time. The itchy sensation became even more pronounced, and I started to be unable to resist. Ha! Each breath was shakier than the last as my hand unknowingly pulled at the ropes in an attempt to scratch my face. Thud! But the ropes stopped me before I could do that. I tried to steady myself, to breathe, but my body wouldn't listen. The longer I sat there, the worse it got. The itch beneath my skin intensified, spreading rapidly, like something was writhing just beneath the surface. Every second stretched, dragging a fresh wave of discomfort with it, until my entire body felt like 1,000 different insects were crawling beneath the skin of my face. I need to scratch. I need to scratch. I started to feel desperate. The itch didn't step. It only grew with time, and my hand started to pull at the ropes as I instinctively tried to bring my hands to my face in an attempt to scratch it. Ugh! The discomfort intensified with the music. As time dragged on, the itch grew more unbearable, gnawing at my insides relentlessly. 2 more minutes. I just need to resist for 2 more minutes. The timer next to me never stopped counting. I just needed to persist for a little longer. A cold sensation swept across my face, sending a shiver down my spine. It felt like a cold and lanky hand had just brushed against my face. The sensation threw me off completely as it continued to brush against my face. No, no, no. I slowly turned to stare in the direction of the door. However, the darkness prevented me from seeing anything. And yet, even though it was dark, I understood perfectly that the door was now wide open. My breath left my lungs as the realization hit me. And then, yup, the sickly hand grasped my face, holding it tight as it kept me rooted in place. A warm breath whispered next to my right ear as shivers ran down every part of my body. This is really bad. The door shouldn't have been able to open. And yet, there was someone standing behind me. My breath quickened, and my heart pounded in my chest, its beat thundering in my ears. The hand squeezed my face with even more force, blocking my mouth and nose, as though it was trying to suffocate me. At this rate, I really will die. I need to do something. I hurriedly lowered my hand to stare at my forearm, where I felt something wiggle. Go! Bang! A loud crash echoed as the hand yanked away, leaving me gasping for air. H-A-A! My chest heaved with each breath, but the room was shaking now, a series of deafening crashes echoing through the darkness. Bang! 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 I could only sit in my seat, surrounded by the darkness, unable to tell what was happening. I was a sitting duck, a duck waiting for it to be slaughtered. I need to persist for a little longer, just a little bit longer. I scanned the ropes tangling my body. Because of the nature of the situation, I did not set anything up that would allow me to escape from the ropes. This was so that I wouldn't abuse the system and fall into the temptation of the music. I knew this was the right decision, but at this very moment, it felt like the wrong one. Bang, bang, bang. The sound continued, growing louder, more frantic. The table groaned beneath the force, the chair creaking alongside it. The entire room shook, each sound amplified in the darkness as I sat anxiously. But then, it all grew silent. The only sound echoing in the air was the sound of the music. It was calm, but at the same time felt like a gentle whisper from death itself. Step. A single footstep behind me. The floor creaked under its weight. I couldn't move. My heart pounded in my throat. Did the walker manage to? The step stopped. It was right behind me now. A warm breath slid down my ear. I felt my breath freeze in my chest. And then, just as the anxiety threatened to crush me, the music stopped.